Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 30th, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel TV, which is now Xfinity Channel 8 and 1070, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. First item of the agenda tonight is to kind of establish a quorum. Select Board Member DeCastro.
Present.
Select Board Member Davis. Present. Select Board Member Dykens.
Present.
Select Board Member Shell. Present. And Select Board Member Metters is present. So we are all here. Quick little rundown of our agenda tonight. We're going to start off with a set of approval of minutes for January 16th and January 23rd. We will then go into public announcements and agenda item request. We have one public hearing tonight on the proposed amendments to local alcoholic beverage regulations. Then we will go into public comments on our business agenda. And our business agenda tonight consists of item A, consider acceptance of bench donation at Veterans Field. Item B, consider a special one-day alcohol permit for the Creative Arts Center in Chatham. Item C, consider use and access of town land for Hardings Beach and Cockle Cove for carbon export. We'll explain that later. Item D, disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest, request for exemption determination for Richard Leverett, Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. Item E will be review results of the Community Communications Survey. And item F will be the FY 2025 budget review for 2024 annual town meeting articles under Town Department budget presentation for public safety, police and fire, articles reviews for fixed salaries of elected officials, wood waste reclamation facility enterprise fund, child care voucher program, and updates to the town manager budget recommendations if there are any. And then we will wrap up our evening with appointments to the Summer Residence Advisory Committee, Traffic Safety Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Board, Golf Advisory Committee, and the Conservation Commission, with a final action of our review of the town manager's report for December of 2023. So we have a hearty agenda tonight. I will kick it off with approval of minutes for January 16th, 2024. Do I entertain a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Corrections? Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several. First, on page 1, up at the top, the public participants in the last line, Creighton Nickerson. I believe Creighton is misspelled. It should be Crayton. And that appears also on page 8, second paragraph from the bottom. Then on page 7, under item D, first full paragraph, in the 5th line, the committee is very supportive of installing gravity sewers wherever. I would strike possible and substitute the word necessary. And then it continues on, examples of other town policies. I would pluralize town and apostrophe after that possessive case, other towns' policies. Is Kathy getting this?
She's online.
She's online, okay. Then on page 8, the second full paragraph, which begins, it was suggested, and then in the last line of that, the subsidizing of grinder pumps to second homeowners, I would insert after the word owners, including properties held for investment. Including properties held for investment was discussed. Then on page 9, if I can find it, that's backwards, isn't it? Yes, third paragraph, Elaine Gibbs Chatham spoke in opposition to grinder pumps. I don't think that's quite what she said. I think, and she can correct us if I have this wrong. I think it should read, spoke in opposition to the general funding of grinder pumps until the precise numbers of pumps required are known. Let me say that again. Spoke in opposition to the general funding of grinder pumps until the precise numbers of pumps required are known. And then in the second to last paragraph, Mr. Castro made a motion in the second line. I would insert in light of the discussion at tonight's meeting. In light of the discussion at tonight's meeting. And I think there was just one more on page 10. Yes. Third paragraph from the bottom. It was noted that having public comment, I would insert the word contemporaneous before the word public. Contemporaneous public comment. Those are my corrections. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Additional, Mike?
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did Shereen have her hand up? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I just have three, apart from the nits and typos that I passed along to Kathy directly. I think my first one is on page 6, last paragraph. I think that sentence, the first sentence, it was suggested the town secure the general contractor and bids that were received. I mean, I think if you just secure the general contractor and having done that, see if there's a better bid on the 2 sub-bids that were not as competitive. I think that reads a little more clearly. So strike and bids that were received. Page 8, top, the carryover paragraph. If you look on the last line there, that clause, while not always needed, seemed to be a little bit of an orphan to me, and I thought you could just delete it. So that are also recommending extended 5-year warranty to cover the manufacturer's defects on the pumps. I don't know what while always needed adds to that. I would strike that. And then on page 10, the bottom paragraph, last line where it says discussed as being required by the board, that seems to address, I mean, that seems to suggest a policy, and I thought that word should be accepted, since it's up to the board to decide what public comment is admitted or accepted. That's it.
Okay. Additional comments or corrections? All right. All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Next, approval of minutes for January 23rd, 2024. I'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, comments, questions? Mike?
Yeah, I think I just have one on page 3, and I may just need some instruction here, but in the second paragraph, second line, it says fiscal year 2025 is currently based on FY23 actuals, and as FY 2024 actuals are still being audited. Are we done with 24?
No, I'm sorry. No, so I think we're monitoring those. We're in FY '24 right now.
Right, so, I mean, I'll leave it to somebody to figure out what words, but audited seems to be jarring, because how do you audit a partial year?
They're still being compiled, prepared.
There you go.
Prepared. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I had. Oh, I'm sorry. On page 5, bottom paragraph, over on the right, I would strike the words "and there," top line, strike the words "and there," so it just reads, waterfront bond, projects will be a separate discussion.
All right. Dean?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on page 4, I have 3. It's the fourth full paragraph, right in the middle. Town manager is recommending 5 million in capital expenses. I think it's 2.3 million, isn't it, Jill? I don't know where the 5 comes from.
It's requested versus recommended, just like here.
So I thought about 12 million was requested and then you recommended.
Yeah, we received, I think the town manager received 5 million in capital, no. If you don't mind, if Carrie, the finance director, can come up.
Hi, Carrie Maslow, Finance Director. It was 10 million that everybody requested, and the 2.3 is between 10 and 250,000 that we approved, and the 5 million was all of the projects that we approved. So there's some that will be on the.
Separate articles.
Yeah, separate articles, yep,
Okay,
okay.
as long as you're okay with that number, Jill. Page 5, third full paragraph, which begins with my name. First line, CPC articles, I would strike the word articles and substitute the word recommendations. In the second line, by an unelected group, I would put the word, strike the word group and insert body. And then strike everything after the word without and substitute the select board having the authority to regulate the amounts recommended, without the select board having the authority to strike regulate, reduce the amounts recommended. And then on page 6, second full paragraph, final sentence, the reallocation of the 1.5% land bank surtax, I think we should insert after the 1.5% from the former land bank surtax. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Additional comments, corrections? We're all good? All right. All those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right. Public announcements and agenda item request. I have 2 to kick off. One, just want to mention that this past Saturday, the Select Board met in the morning. We had our second workshop, and we reviewed, discussed, and finally voted on the fiscal year 2025, calendar year 2024 Select Board goals and objectives. So those will be posted on the town's website. Took us a couple workshops and some good hearty discussion, but those are done and will be up for review for anyone to look at. And then the second announcement is, I just want to take a moment to give a huge thank you. Norma Avler, who has served the town specifically on the Finance Committee, after many, many years of service, has decided to step away and quote, retire from the Finance Committee. She has served the town tremendously, has always been a very straight shooter in her comments, was never, ever afraid to put us in our place when we needed it. But she's decided that it's time to step back, and I'm sure she'll be watching us, but I wish her all the best. Sincere appreciation for all the years of service to the town, and I wish her the best of luck in her quiet time as she is a citizen, and I'm sure listening to her actions, but she'll be deeply missed, and I wish her all the best, so. Yes. All right, public announcements or agenda item requests from the board. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a former member of the Finance Committee, I share your comments about Norma. She will be missed. I do have an agenda item request, which I submit jointly with Mr. Shell. Recently, Barbara Siegel, who's a former member of the Council on Aging, submitted a proposal asking the board to consider supporting an adult daycare program at the Methodist Church. And I'd like to request that that be placed on our agenda in the near future. Hopefully you can do it within 30 days. I'll leave that up to you. Several of us visited the church on Friday, and I think there's a lot of potential there, including the potential for some grant money, which I know the town manager and the director of the Center for Active Living, Leah Lacrosse, are going to be reviewing for possible submittal. So,
All right,
thank you.
noted. Shereen.
I just want to let everybody know that Natural Resource Director Greg Berman, Shellfish Constable, and the whole department met with the team from Monomoy, the project leader from the district, as well as the two employees that are out there, and another biologist, and to talk about some of the issues and try to open up a better communications with Monomoy, as we had talked about in our last meeting when they came to visit us. It was a nice meeting. There are some red flags I think that we need to keep in the back of our heads. One thing though of interest that the project leader did flag for us is that they were here meeting to discuss the decommission of the building that they actually house their refuge in. They were out shopping around for where they could be relocated, including having a meeting, I was told by her, with the Coast Guard. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that that's a work in progress. We are continuing it. I think it was a really, as I said, a congenial meeting, and we'll just keep the lines of communication. The staff really seem like they're really connected really well. There's some already working relationships between some of the staff and Monomoy, so I think we're in better shape than I might have perceived at our last meeting.
Good, good. Anyone else from the board? Any public announcements or agenda item requests from the public? Frank?
Hi. Hopefully next time you see me, I'm 4 inches taller and not scratched over. Frank Messina, South Chatham Village. Just quickly, as an agenda request, I'm not an elitist, and I really greatly admire the work that the Affordable Housing Trust is doing, and it could be commended. The town sat on its backside for a lot of years, and you guys are finally doing something, okay? I believe there is a correspondence from the town manager, from the town council, addressing the issue of the select board's providence, if you will, and concern relative to the Affordable Housing Trust. I attended the only one and only meeting that I could get to, and I felt there were a lot of questions unanswered, and there were a lot of things yet to be done. And I think a conversation or an agenda item between the Select Board and the Affordable Housing Trust to go over some of these issues and discuss, how it's going to proceed. I mean, the trust is moving ahead, God bless you. RFPs are about to be issued, and although there is time in the future for work to be done, I think upfront there needs to be an understanding, and I think the public is going to feel a lot more comfortable, with where this thing is going before it gets too far. So, bottom line, I'd like to, if you don't already have it scheduled, an agenda to review that memo and with the Affordable Housing Trust and find out, where we're going. Thank you.
All right, noted, Frank. Thank you. Any other public comments from the audience in house? Is there anyone online?
I do. I have one hand up. Just trying to get to it. And it is Stephen Buckley.
Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Messina just said. I have a concern, of course, having sold the former Buckley property. I'm certainly have been thinking for a long time about what could be built there. As a member of the Economic Development Committee and also the Long Range Planning, you know, that has always been in the back of my mind about what would be the best thing, highest and best use for that property. So I'm glad to see that the town bought it, and I'm not a critic of what's going to be built there, but I just wanted to say that I think there needs to be some more thought put into it. I cringe at the idea that I'll drive past there in the future and wince instead of wink, I guess, you know, to be able to say, and so I have a concern that things are moving too fast, and I hope that the board leans in and provides a better forum for people to express their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else online?
No.
No, sorry. Dean, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to join in and adopt as my own Mr. Messina's request. I really would like to see that. I did watch the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, and I really would like an opportunity for the select board to weigh in on the concept that was put forward by the consultants if and when you put this on the agenda.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. All right, moving right along. Public hearing for proposed amendments to local alcoholic beverage regulations. If our clerk would read the public notice, that would be greatly appreciated.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 30th, 2024 at 5:30 PM in the large meeting room at the Town Office Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, and remotely through the link in the posted agenda, to consider changes to the Select Board's local alcoholic beverage licensing rules and regulations. Signed, the Select Board.
Thank you very much. Shauna, good evening.
Good evening, Shauna Neely, the licensing agent for the board. The draft policy before you tonight includes amendments made by Town Council Pat Costello when he reviewed the original draft. I've not received any comments from the public to be able to read to you, but certainly happy to answer any questions. The majority of the changes, again, remain in Section C for special one-day licenses, with some housekeeping edits throughout the document for clarification or correction of selectmen to select board.
All right, questions or comments from the board? Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shauna, great job on this. I just saw one, I don't know if it's an edit or if it's just the system on page 15. The paragraph that begins in the middle, which begins in accordance with MGL Chapter 138, there is underlining in the last two lines, on my version anyway. I think that's just extraneous.
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think they're fine if there are members of the public who want to speak. I'm interested to hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any board comment at the moment before I go to the public? All right. Anyone from the audience in-house that has a question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Mary Ellen Lorifis, and I'm here representing the Chatham Walkers. We have a holiday party, usually the first Wednesday or Tuesday of December. We always ask for the one-day permit, and it's always been granted. I know we're a different situation than the merchants are dealing with, because we're a group of senior citizens who meets upstairs in the community center in the big room. We rent that room plus the kitchen. We have our little party, and we leave home for home at 8:30. All the wine and beer are consumed right there, and that's that. So there's no like open container up and down streets or anything like that. It's like a different situation. And I just was hoping our part of it would not change if there were going to be any changes to be made.
Sean, essentially, no. I mean, it'd pretty much be the standard protocol, apply for the one-day permit, we would review it. Traditionally, we have granted it. Nothing in this document really would impact that at all.
No, the only new requirements within the special one-day application are just a diagram and that someone attend the meeting to make that request, and you always have.
And just to note too, I think we have a 30-day request, calendar, so you know when you're gonna
Right.
request it anyway, so just probably ask a little bit earlier in the process, but no, there would be no significant impact to that
Thank you very
request.
much.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the in-house audience at the moment? Yes. Yep, yeah, up to the podium, please, yes.
Hi, I'm Ted Atwood, and we were granted a one-day liquor license at Christmas. It went really well. I really liked the recommendations you had in here. There were only 2 points of clarification in Section C, and they were related to the discretion of the committee to appoint a police detail or require a police detail. I would just ask for clarification on that, like what would the boundary lines be? And then secondly, there was a condition at the discretion of the select board as a condition of the license, the number of one-day licenses, if that will be determined in advance for any particular day, in advance of the 30-day notice.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that particular clause is just our discretion. If we feel that there's too many applicants coming through, we could, at our discretion, say, we're putting a cap on it. We have yet to ever implement such an action, but it's something I think it's kind of a safeguard if we feel things are gonna get out of control or, get to a certain limit that is gonna be detrimental to the event of the day. It's just a safeguard that we put in place. I mean, we'd have to obviously make the action in public, but, I mean, Shauna can comment if I'm steering you incorrectly, but it's more of just a safeguard for us.
Sure, with the 30-day notice, we felt that if there was 50 requests coming in for a particular day or a particular event, it would give the board time to say, wait a minute, let's rethink this, let's see how we can maybe, if it's gonna be a lottery for 30, something. But it would just allow the board the discretion to say.
Or if we needed other resources, if we talked to PD and be like, okay, we have a much larger event than we had initially expected, this is larger than our normal resources
Correct.
are. We need to take a certain action plan, what should we do? So it just gives us better planning too.
Okay, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just, Chief
Yep.
Anderson didn't pass out when you said 30, so that's fantastic. But just looking at that, if there was any discussion around clarification so that since the 30-day advance period, may have a number of applicants that come in, all around the same time, it would be hard for you to manage it after the fact.
Not sure if I mean, I think the 30 days gives us enough time to figure how to manage it, because we're asking that 30-day window ahead of the event, gives us a better understanding of what the interest level is, what resources we may have to dedicate, et cetera, any questions, any follow-ups. So I think we could manage it actually better, is my interpretation or my thoughts, but.
Well, yeah, it's not a criticism necessarily, it's just an observation, related to the trigger that would set that off. That's all.
Okay. Thoughts?
I think Mr. Atwood had another question about the police detail.
Okay,
Maybe
yep.
Shauna can give him some examples of those.
Sure, say, well, just give Oktoberfest as an example. When they expanded to 2 locations, we were able to ask that they have police details in both spots. Okay. So it's still a discretionary requirement, if you will, that the board retains to say, this looks like there's a possibility that people could be wondering about, let's ask for police detail to be put in place.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anyone else in-house with a question or comment? Is there anyone online?
We have Kristen Muller.
Kristen, please go ahead.
You unmute. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. I think First of all, I will reiterate what other people said. I think this was well thought out, and I am not displeased with the amendment. My two questions are the same as the previous speaker, and I think that for those of us that do apply for these licenses from time to time, the ambiguity of those two clauses are what, gives us pause. The police detail on Oktoberfest obviously makes a lot of sense, and it was something that we wanted to do as often as you might have requested it of us. But I think there's some fear that, a store might be required to pay for a police detail for the night for, an in-store event, and I think that that might raise some concern. The second part about the limit on the numbers, my only thought on that is that you all, this current board that I have dealt with in the last handful of years, have been very reasonable and very understanding and, amenable to working with the merchants and other townspeople in doing this. I think there's some concern about how a future board might read that clause and maybe limit things in a way that is not your intention. So the parameters of that limit is, I guess, what would raise a concern. Not the limit itself, but what would trigger a limit, and where that limit might be, as opposed like maybe a floor of it, maybe not a ceiling of it. I don't know, but those are my only two concerns.
Well, thank you very much. One of my thoughts is this board can't dictate what a future board's going to do, so a future board could be more restrictive or less restrictive. You don't know that. These regulations can be changed with a matter of a public hearing. So this body is acting in the best interest of what we think is good for the future or the current use of, town resources, town property, the community. I don't think we're looking, I'll speak for myself. I don't think we're at a point where we have a hard number that we're looking for a cap on. I think things have relatively worked well. We've had some pretty large events. The holiday stroll, quite a few people visited the town, quite a few establishments participated, and I don't think we reached that quote cap yet, at least in my opinion. So I wouldn't get overly concerned about that clause. I think it's just more of a general safeguard for the board that, we have. And I think we've used that discretion well. So those are my thoughts. Okay, Dean.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I share your thoughts, and I would just add, I don't know if town council's on this meeting, but I suspect that even if these clauses weren't in there, that we could still impose these requirements or limitations, but I think nonetheless, having them in there gives us some additional legal support, and I would certainly like to keep them in there, and as you mentioned, we've been pretty reasonable and liberal about what we've granted, and I think if we have problems in the future, we can always amend these regulations. It's certainly open to a future board to say we don't want to have this at all. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Any additional public comments in-house or online? I don't see any other hands up, but
Town Council Costello is online if you
Pat?
need him to.
Sure, Pat. How you doing tonight?
Good evening, folks. Just with respect to Dean's comment, he's absolutely correct. The board, as the local licensing authority, does have broad discretion under Chapter 138 with respect to the one-day licenses. And it's always prudent, as the board knows, to have guidelines or regulations reduced to writing and memorialized in writing so that they're clear, both for the public and for members of the board in applying the regs. So I think it's absolutely appropriate and very prudent to have that language in the regulations as stated.
All right, thank you, Pat. All right, last call for public comment. Anyone? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Entertain a motion on the regulations.
I move to approve the regulations as presented and discussed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next, public comment on our business agenda. I will start with the audience in-house tonight. Is it Mr. Oppenheim?
David Oppenheim, Abscami Run. Before I start, I just want to say that I am a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Board, and I am not speaking on behalf of the board. I'm speaking on myself as an individual member. I think hopefully that's appropriate way of disclosing. So I'm here to speak on item D, the disclosure of appearance of a conflict of interest. So to start with, I would say, one, I don't think it is the applicant in this, or the person that's requesting a waiver is a direct abutter of the Buckley property, which is something that we on the board are, dealing with, and it's part of our charge. And I think it is not an appearance of a conflict of interest. It is a conflict of interest. I've done a lot of research on this since this appeared, and a direct abutter to the Buckley property is, as I just stated. I talked to several lawyers, one of whom is a town council in another nearby town, and when I described the situation that was granting a waiver, his immediate reaction was surprise, and described it as a bright red line, a line which you could not cross. It is a conflict of interest, period. He said if it was waived, you'd have to cautious, the board would have to be very cognizant of the precedent it might be setting with other regulatory boards. And one of the examples, a couple examples we pandered around is, you imagine a planning board member, has been on the planning board for years, his neighbor has several acres, decides to subdivide, and that person asks for a waiver saying, I am an honest person, I'm very objective, I've been on the board, I have a lot of knowledge, and even though the property's abutting me, I can be completely objective. And regardless of what my family says or anything else, I will go by the law. I know they would try. I'm not questioning the honesty or integrity, but that's why they have these types of rules. You look at the Board of Appeals. Can you imagine somebody on the Board of Appeals having an abutter come in and he's asking for a waiver because they're going to be granting a variance or a special permit or something like that? It's a very clear conflict of interest. I have been in front of boards in this town for years, and when you go to the Board of Appeals, they notify abutters and abutters to abutters. I believe conservation is the same, it's at least abutters, and it's because there's perceived to be an influence or an interest on the abutters' parts, and I think there's a reason that establishes very clear. Over the years, I've watched this Board of Selectmen and previous boards of selectmen, and many of you, if not all of you at one time or another, have stepped down because of an appearance of a conflict of interest, whether it really was, or you just felt it would create a conflict, or maybe some question as to the decisions and recommendations by this board, so you took the cautious approach and stepped back. And I know that several of the members have done it recently, and some very good things. And several of them I didn't even think were conflicts, but you did. And you did the right thing, because part of the thing, if you don't do that, you hold the whole board up to a question of accountability. The Affordable Housing Trust, as newly constituted, it's a regulatory board. It actually has a fiduciary obligation. We'll be spending money. Hopefully we'll be spending money very soon on affordable housing, and we're making very, very big decisions. The member that's looking for the waiver is a direct abutter, as I said, and while he has been very, very helpful, and I don't question his intent or anything like that, it's the appearance of a conflict of interest, and this is one of the clearest got examples of that. I don't think we can leave, I don't want to have our board, which is working extremely hard, it cannot leave any question when we make decisions or recommendations to the public or for spending money for affordable housing. I don't think it can leave any questions of the objectivity of the recommendations or the decisions. My hope is that the applicant hearing this and listening to these types of things will actually, when it comes up, I think it's number D on your agenda, will in fact reconsider and withdraw his appeal for a waiver, which I don't think can possibly be granted, and step back on the Buckley property and in fact act as a private citizen, leave the room, all the things that go with recusing oneself, and act as a private citizen to give his opinions. His opinions may be valid, and as a private citizen should be considered. But as far as being on the board, it cannot be. If the waiver is not, if he does not remove the request for a waiver, it would be my suggestion that this board cannot in any way, shape, or form grant it. And as one of the attorneys said, it is in fact a bright red line that you should not and cannot cross. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank?
Frank Messina, South Chatham. Ouch. I don't know what to say. I mean, this body appointed the person who we don't seem to be mentioning his name, Rick Levitt, to the board. And I assume you knew what you were doing when you appointed him, and probably appointed him because of his many years of involvement in affordable and, more important, attainable housing, and having a rich understanding of the problem in Chatham. And it, it just doesn't make sense. And, I didn't hire any attorneys or have any attorneys. I love attorneys. I paid $320,000 for one, okay? And he's really good, my son. But, you can get attorneys to say anything with all due respect and opinions. And ethics is a very private thing. It's up to the individual. And let me change my hat a second. As chairman of the Historical Commission, we deal with it all the time. And there's absolutely no financial interest with the individual. What are we talking about? He's a citizen. And it just is, boy, it's getting a bad taste in the mouth of myself and the members of the town if this is the situation that you've created here. And I just hope you can see the way to move forward. This is not the Zoning Board of Appeals. This is not the Conservation Commission. This is a trust, and a housing trust. And I believe when you appointed the trust, you were looking for it to go out to the community to get some difference of opinions and what's going on. It's very important. The town is changing. The Historical Commission, we had 22 applications 2 years ago. Last year, in 2023, we had 63 applications for demolitions and major changes in the community. So everybody's concerned of where we're going. So I think we're going to set a precedent here, which is just not where we want to go. So hopefully, you can put the attorneys aside and just move forward and do it the Chatham way, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else in the audience tonight? I see a couple hands online.
So we have Elaine Gibbs first, Stephen Buckley next, and George Myers after that.
Elaine, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Elaine Gibbs. I was going to speak on another issue, but I'll start with this one first. Mr. Levin and I are usually on the opposite side of just about everything, but he was appointed to the board. He has always been vocal about affordable housing, to the point of me saying, oh my gosh, here we go again. I find it really ironic that only now this has become an issue. I've watched all the Affordable Housing Trust meetings, And it suddenly came up because he felt 60 units was too much, as did a lot of other people in the public on the Buckley property, 60 units. He said, and he's done his research, he's visited other towns. He recommended members of the board go and look at them, that they should be something that Chatham could be the leader on in green space and quality of life. So I think it's ironic that it's happening now, and I think he should stay on the board. I think the timing is very odd. He was the only one that said he thought 60 units was way too much for the property, and I think that's what's prompted this. In terms of the other item, I think it's the child care voucher and the updates to the town manager's budget. Since I don't know what the scope's going to be, I just wanted to point out that I watched Finance Committee today, and the explanation of the $450,000 increase to the Chatham Elementary School was because I guess Monomoy thinks we should put a pre-K program back in Chatham. I think this needs a lot more discussion. I don't know why they'd be recommending that. I don't know what the formula would be. We've taken over the cost of the elementary school. Does the formula apply? Does that mean it's really 1.2 million, or are they saying we want you to have a pre-K, even though we have one in Harwich that our children go to? And then it runs in conflict with the other programs that we have. We have the Florence Selden program that provides our financing for pre-K programs. So what do we want? Are we going to have those as well? And where are we going to get the students from? If we're paying to send them to private programs, why would we be doing this? So I think that there's no coordination between all these programs. So I would hope that as you move forward and get the superintendent in, that he has some answers to those questions. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Stephen.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to speak to the item, actually two items, they're related. Item E, review results of community communications survey by communications manager and community engagement officer, Shauna Neely. And the other one is kind of related in the sense that the last item, item H, town manager's report, also speaks to something that was raised earlier as an item request, community under housing initiatives, community outreach and engagement for Main Street and Meeting House Road properties. And they're related in the sense that if there's some dissatisfaction, unhappiness with the communication that's gone on, the community engagement that's gone on with those properties, that's just one example of a larger issue of communication so that more people are involved in a meaningful way, not a superficial or performative way, in discussions about the future of the town and projects and so forth and so on. I don't want to get into the details because it looks like there's a very large PowerPoint presentation that Sean is going to give. And I'll probably have more questions afterwards, but because of the format of the meeting, I have to say what I think she's going to say by trying to interpret the PowerPoint presentation that's in the packet. So I am not going to do that, but I hold that out as an example of how the format of this type of discussion, where we're only supposed to comment on what we think is going to be said, not allowed to ask questions for clarification. So I'm not going to go any further other than point out those are examples of how the larger approach to communication, which is what the subject of the Shauna's presentation is, and the example of the housing initiatives are need to require the agenda item that I proposed 4 or 5 years ago about having an advisory committee. Otherwise, you're just going to have the administrative staff self-evaluating their communication. And everybody thinks they're a listener. Even Donald Trump has said he thinks he's a great listener. So, on that, we're all subjective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Your comments are noted. Finally, George.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would actually like to differ with the previous speaker who pointed out about a red line beyond which a person cannot go if there's a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest in this case with Mr. Levitt is a presumption. It is not a red line. If you have a presumption, there is a factual basis for overcoming that presumption. And I read in the agenda packet, there
Mr.
is
Chair, can I interrupt Mr. Myers for a moment?
Yes.
I just want to take note that Mr. Myers is no longer a resident or summer resident of the town of Chatham, so therefore he's speaking as an out-of-towner, even though he's been very, very vocal and very engaged in our town. As a resident, he is right now no longer a resident. So I just want to note that.
I note that.
And it's entirely up to, obviously.
If the board just wishes to not let an out-of-town individual speak, I will support that. I was going to give Mr. Myers a couple of minutes to speak his thoughts. We have traditionally, very recently, given him the podium, but your comments are well noted. Mike?
Yeah, I'll join in what Shireen just said. I want to let Mr. Myers is here. He has a prepared statement or whatever. I'm not into cutting him off today. But I think that going forward, that we're entitled, if he's going to be a regular participant in meetings, we're entitled to some sort of a statement from Mr. Myers in a general way that expresses his continued interest. And when I say interest, I'm not talking about, following a ball team. I'm talking about some aspect of Chatham other than a fond remembrance that, continues to be part of his, I'll call it portfolio, if you will. And then I think we can evaluate the issue that Shireen has raised and that I share.
Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to offer the remembrance that I think it was just last week when we adopted the changes to the public participation policy, the town council advised us that we should entertain allow comment from out-of-town people. I do think we should encourage anyone who comes to the podium, if we don't already know who they are or where they're from, to provide their town of residence, and our city of residence. So I just really raise that as a caution in terms of what we might do in the future. I think anybody that shows up there, as I mentioned last week, when I was chair of this board, we were lobbied by a resident of Brewster to adopt a ban on plastic bottles. And I allowed considerable leeway to that individual to speak more than once in that evening, and I think that was the right thing to do, even though I disagreed with her at the time. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and I agree with what Dean just said, and I think we'll allow him to speak.
All right. George, please go ahead.
I will very close to finish, Mr. Chairman, but the point I really wanted to make was that for those in the town, they should read Mr. Levitt's statement in the agenda packet, because it explains in great detail what he has been doing for housing for many, many years. And I think that's important. I think it's very clear that he has really no financial interest whatsoever in the Buckley property and never has had. The fact that he is a butter, as I said before, is simply a presumption, and that presumption can be overcome. And in my opinion, his statement of facts certainly overcomes that. And On the other point that was raised, I'll be happy to provide the Board of Selectmen with the issues that I've been involved with in Chatham over the years. Most of you know that I have vacationed, lived, and had a summer residence in Chatham for probably 56 years. So I will make a submission to the board so that this issue hopefully will not come up again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. All right, any additional public input? All right. Moving right along to our business agenda, we will start with item A, consider acceptance of bench donation at Veterans Field. Deputy Director of Park and Recreation, Amy Howell, I believe is online. Possibly?
I don't see her, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I'm just looking. So essentially, it's a bench donation for Veterans Field along the third baseline by in memory of Jim Falvey, with the quote, "Take it easy, see you later." And so this has been vetted by the Parks and Recreation Commission, and they've recommended that the board accept the donation of the memorial bench at Veterans Field, the baseline, from Barry Allen and family in memory of Jim Falvey, who was a longtime Chatham Anglers host family.
All right, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I
from the board?
move
Yes.
that we accept the donation.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor? Select Board Member DeCastro,
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Next, consider a special one-day alcohol permit, Creative Arts Center in Chatham Incorporated on February 5th, 2024, from 2:30 to 4 p.m. Quick question, since we just adopted the rules, do we have to waive our 30-day?
We do. Oh,
We're starting off.
When were they effective?
I don't know, immediately. Just covering ourselves here.
I move that we waive the 30-day requirement for this application. Is it this one or these? This one?
This one.
This is just one.
One.
This is one.
Yeah, second. Yeah, go ahead.
We probably don't have to, but I would. All right, so that's second. All those in favor? Select Board Member DeCastro, Davis.
Aye.
Dykens.
Aye.
Shell.
Aye.
Metters. Okay. Motion to approve it.
So moved.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And a Select Board Member Metter says aye. Item C, consider.
Mr. Chair, so we had Justin Alex, who's the president of the Creative Arts Center, and he is online.
Oh, I'm sorry, Justin. Should we start it over and reconsider?
I just want to thank you guys for approving that. It's Angela Malt, who's been our executive director now for 12 years, is retiring, and we figured it'd be fun to have a little party for her on Monday the 5th. So thank you so much.
We'll have a great event.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right. Item C, consider use, access of town land, Hardings Beach and Cockle Cove for carbon export.
Greg Berman, Director of Natural Resources. I assume you might like some explanation for this one?
Yes, please.
So this is a team of scientists from Old Dominion, USGS, and WHOI who are hoping to install some equipment at Hardings Marsh in 2024, and then the same equipment in Cockle Cove in 2025. There'll be a series of groundwater wells and aluminum collars to measure gas flux. And part of this is to request permission. The other part is to notify yourselves in the town that nobody's constructing a cell phone tower, a UFO hasn't landed, but there will be, if you approve, a weather station out there that's about 6 feet high, tripod aluminum, and all the equipment is taken away at the end of the season. So really April to fall at Hardings, then again at Cockle Cove. The rationale for why this is being proposed is that The breakdown of marshes can lead to increased CO2 in the atmosphere, which drives climate change, global warming, sea level rise. These scientists would like to explore the potential for the carbon within the pore space of the soil of the marsh being taken offshore and into the ocean. So that has to do with the total alkalinity and the dissolved carbon within that system. So that's why they're getting the pore water. They're measuring the alkalinity and doing meteorological measurements to see really just how much of the carbon is taken out into the ocean versus brought up into the atmosphere. So the stuff that's taken into the ocean can actually, decrease or make more acidic the ocean, but also it's not quite as impactful to global warming as it is for CO2 in the atmosphere. So the theory is to look at various elevations of marshes all through our region, and so they've picked these two in the town of Chatham to hopefully explore. We have gotten them in touch, or plan to have them get in touch with the Energy and Climate Action Committee, because there is a salt marsh study that's getting very close to realization, and some of these marshes would be in the same area, and I think there might be a nice synergy between the two. So with that, our recommendation is to allow if you see fit.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from the board? Shireen?
Well, I'll geek out on this for a minute. Greg, thank you for the presentation. You said this was a part of a bigger, broader study. Is it a national study or just a regional study?
This particular one's a regional study, but the study of looking at salt marsh pore water being a carbon export offshore, kind of the blue carbon idea, is international. So I mean, those studies have occurred in many areas. Part of the reason why they're looking in this area is because our salt marshes really capture more and store more carbon than our land-based forests. So as they degrade, they want to get a better feel for how this region might impact the global carbon cycle.
Okay, ocean acidification is a growing concern for a lot of people. I've seen some of the studies that we were part of with our fish weirs, and I'm really happy to see this kind of work being done in the town. I think it's important that, we have such a pristine, we have a wonderful natural environment here that when we've talked about inviting academic institutions into town to do this kind of studies, this is spot on to what we'd like to see here. So I'm very supportive of this. Thanks.
Jeff?
Yeah, as am I. I think it's exciting, and I wish him well. We are a perfect petri dish for this kind of stuff, so I really think it's really cool, and hopefully it's the start of some more to come. Very, very much welcomed. Thanks.
Okay. Additional comments, thoughts from the board? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right. Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, thank you. Good
Thank you
luck.
much.
All right. Item D, disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest, request for exemption determination for Richard Levitt for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. And as we mentioned earlier, Pat is on if we have any procedural questions or general questions. Mr. Levitt, would you like to step up to the podium? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Rick Levitt from West Chatham. And I'm sorry that we have to go through this tonight. Pat's online. We're here because I was advised to contact Pat, and I did a couple of weeks ago when I became aware that there is a presumption of a conflict of interest that I have because I am a direct abutter to Buckley property. Pat may comment on this, but I'm just going to quickly read from his email to me, which was on January 18th. After saying he has no doubts about my intentions and participation in the Housing Trust Board deliberations relative to this matter, have been and will be unbiased and in the best interest of the town, and I certainly agree with that. Pat went on to say, you may disclose in writing to the select board, which is the appointing authority, the nature and circumstances of the matter and your financial interest therein. The disclosure document you forwarded to Pat, along with a request that the board render a determination of no substantial conflict under a certain mass law, would adequately serve this purpose. The select board could then provide you with a written determination that it does not consider your interest in the matter to be so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of my services. I just have a very brief comment to make. I only wish to comment so the record is absolutely clear to you and to our town that neither I, my wife, nor family members have a direct, indirect, or speculative financial interest in my neighbor Joe Buckley's family's property. If I thought developing my neighbor's property for affordable and attainable housing would affect my property value, I would not have spoken publicly at town meeting in support of acquiring the property. And I also said at that town meeting that I was a direct abutter to the Buckley property. So you and everyone else in this community knew my presumed conflict of interest. I would not have, at a recent trust board meeting, if I thought my property value would be affected by building affordable and attainable housing on my neighbor's property, I would not have supported buying some additional Buckley property. There is neither a conflict of interest nor the appearance of one. There is a conflict of opinion over development strategy on our board, Housing Trust Board. You and our town are best served by ensuring that there is a diversity of opinion on the trust board. It would set a bad precedent for the town's future if there were not diverse viewpoints on the Housing Trust Board or any other public body, including yours. You guys have differences of opinion. You don't ask, I won't go there. As a longtime spokesman for West Chatham Neighborhood Center, where the Buckley property is, my interests are solely and unequivocally to help solve Chatham's real housing crisis in a fair, unbiased manner, and I hope you will agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt.
I'm happy to answer any questions, by the way, but I'll go sit down.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, let me say that I've worked with Rick since February on the effort to approve 1610. We've become friends, collaborators, and I would say spent a lot of time both talking about that project as well as affordable housing. This is painful for me. With all due respect to my friend, Mr. Messina, I'm not getting paid for this opinion. This is what I believe, and it's a legal opinion. This is a legal issue. It is not an issue of politics or anything else. It's legal. I want to say there's a little bit of an effort here to suggest that everybody knew and it didn't come up until, which really is not a correct representation of the responsibilities of everybody who serves on every board in this town. When they sit you down on a board anywhere, you get a packet, and included in that packet is all the rules and regulations for conflicts of interest and so forth. You have a responsibility not only to take the test and get qualified, but you have a responsibility, if you're still there 2 years later, to renew it every 2 years. It's the responsibility of the individual to identify circumstances which involve a potential conflict of interest and to deal with it. And there are a number of ways to deal with it. You can speak with town council, you can go to the State Ethics Commission, you can consult your colleagues if you like, you can do whatever you can, but it's your responsibility, not this board, not. Now, I will recognize, for the record, that when this board gave Mr. Levitt a license back in June to use the property in order to install, I think it was a generator, we were constructively informed, if we didn't know it before, that he was an abutter. But that doesn't change the fact that it's his responsibility to deal with that. That's number one. Number two is he's correct. I agree with it. And town council, I think, has confirmed that given this conflict of interest, and you can call it presumed if you will, I'll come back to that in a second, but at that point, he has two options, either recuse or come to this board and ask us for the waiver that he's asked for. Now, with respect to the presumed aspect, I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly what that's doing in the law. From my perspective, somebody who is an abutter has a conflict of interest, because it's not a matter of whether you're in favor of this or it's going to adversely affect you or it's going to make your property values go up. And it's not really a matter of what you think. It's a matter of what the potential is. So it's plus or minus. That's what the conflict of interest is. And in this case, I don't have any doubt that Mr. Levitt is a strong proponent of affordable housing. We together have been. I've driven around town. We've shared views. We've plotted and planned and so forth. But in this case, the issue is whether he has a substantial interest that is a conflict. Excuse me, the interest is not in the Buckley property. The interest is in his property. That's the interest that's in question. Nobody's complaining or contending that he has an interest in the Buckley property. At the end of the day, the way I analyze this is what would I do? And I would absolutely not want to put my colleagues on the Affordable Housing Trust board in the position of having to act in a context where, as Mr. Oppenheim said, there are fiduciary responsibilities that somebody could worry are being, how should I say it, questioned because we have somebody on the board with an interest in the decision. Similarly, on this board, if you don't want to put your colleagues in that position of opening yourself up to a criticism, legal or otherwise, from the outside that the decision was not taken properly. And I've asked him several times if he wouldn't consider recusing. Obviously, he hasn't done that, but I really wish he would. With greatest, how should I say it? I'm at great pains, but I must vote not to approve this waiver request.
Additional questions or comments? Shereen?
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with Mike on this, and I go back to what would I do so that I wouldn't impact the board members here. And perfect example is the Meeting House Road property. I oftentimes think about that because I owned a house right next door to there when I was younger, and then our family owned the Twine Field until it was sold to the town of Chatham. So I think if we still own those, or if I own those, it would be a given and it would be expected of the community that I would recuse myself from that. I easily would be called out of having a conflict of interest. And I think, we oftentimes do look at it. We all live in a small town. This town, when you work and you're involved in the community and your heart and soul's into everything, there are going to be moments where it could be perceived that there is a conflict. And being a select board member or a member of a committee, it's important that you recognize that and be as transparent as possible. When a conflict of interest involving an abutter on a committee tasked with deciding a project designed for us, it can have significant repercussions for the community in its perception of how the process is going, in the actual outcome of that project. And, we really need to ensure our integrity, in the decision-making process and promote the best interests of the town. And it's crucial that we're addressing and mitigating these kind of conflicts among, with the committees, committee members that are engaged, who may perceive to have a conflict. Nobody's kicking Mr. Levitt off a committee. This is just simply, should you, he could recuse himself from this one item. And he could, we are working on a lot, and he's a valued member of that committee. So I just want to say that this is where I'm landing with this.
I'm going to jump in a second because I know I'm going to end up going home tonight and shaking my head going, Corey, just shut your mouth and let things go. But this topic, this process, the trust thing is really starting to frost me a little bit. This trust, it was supposed to be a great relationship with the select board and the community to move things forward. And for building reasons, we're putting a kind of this cloud is growing on this process. And we have, and Pat can correct me if I'm wrong, so we have a situation, and let me take a step back. The conflict of interest, it falls on each of us as an individual. We have to make individual decisions, what we want to do, don't do, and there's consequences if we choose to move forward. I did that with the Council of Aging project, and I felt that my conflict was there. I stepped away from it. Some people said, no, you should have stayed on. We end of the day, it's our own decision. I'm a little troubled that it was staff that reached out to Mr. Levitt to kind of, nudge consideration of, well, should he consider conflict of interest, not conflict of interest. He can definitely call the clerk of the day. I think any of us who've exercised that right knows that if we throw something at them, they're going to err on the side of conflict of interest. So I think if you were to call the clerk of the day, they would have probably advised him, yes, you probably have a conflict of interest. But my interpretation of this process is twofold. One, we need to determine whether Mr. Levitt has a real or perceived conflict of interest. Then also, the second prong is that conflict of interest more substantially detrimental to his ability to act on the trust? And this is where I get hung up a little bit, because we've gone through appointments of different committees, and we have consciously not placed abutters on committees because of our concern of conflict of interest. The Eldridge Garage property is an example. We knew, this board knew, that Mr. Levitt was a direct abutter. We placed him on the Affordable Housing Trust. We put our trust in each of those members that we appointed to that committee to serve in the best interest of the town. Mr. Levitt, I've known a very long time. I've known him from the planning board days. And frankly, I haven't always agreed with Mr. Levitt, but he has been very, very consistent with his message about his advocacy for housing for the town, his thoughts on the West Chatham area. He's been he's not some Johnny-come-lately that's shown up to his topic. He's been very consistent in his passion, in his work, and his commitment, and his attendance to meetings. So that second prong is where I'm hung up on, because we knew he was an abutter. Does he have a conflict of interest as a abutter? Yes. I'm not gonna say he doesn't. By definition, as a direct abutter, there's a conflict of interest. But on the second prong, is that more substantially detrimental to his ability to work ethically on this? And I think if we've gone through the process of putting him on the committee, then I think we've expressed some trust in his ability to be impartial. He's made a disclosure. He's asking for us to make a determination. I'm more inclined to let him serve. Again, and I'm going to bite my tongue for saying this cloud that's growing over the Affordable Housing Trust, the perceived cloud, in the public, I mean, even earlier this evening, we have this perceived power struggle going on between the Select Board and the Affordable Housing Trust. All this is so unnecessary. We're supposed to work collaboratively to work for the best efforts of the community. We all have the same goal. And the perception that some people have lately of how we're operating is not in our best interest. And we can do better. I don't want to get mucked up in the politics of us doing the ultimate job and getting some good old-fashioned affordable housing, which is our goal. And you know, this does bother me that we're spending so much time on something like this, and the perception is it's become more political than it needs to be. So those are my thoughts. I'm going to speak my mind. I mean, my third term on this board, may stay, may go, I don't know, but I'm going to speak my mind. You may, yeah, please.
I just want, I want to correct the record. I had lunch with Mr. Levitt very early in the new year. I mentioned this to him. I said to him at the time, I know you're probably going to think that this is about our differences of opinion. It's not. I just want you to be aware of it. Subsequent to that time, I received an email from staff that laid out all of the options for dealing with a conflict of interest, including identification of the the conflict of interest associated with the abutment. And I was offered the opportunity, if I wanted to pass that along to Rick. I subsequently saw Rick and told him about the email and said, I don't know whether he said, go ahead and send it, or I said, I'm going to send it, but I passed it along to him. So this is not about the staff doing anything. This is all about the board and the board members. The staff was merely acting in a supportive capacity and providing the options that you articulated in your comments.
Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm have a bit of conflict, or I'm conflicted over this conflict, if you will, but I think I know where I'm going to land. I've known Rick for years. He's a wonderful member of this community and a real advocate for West Chatham and for affordable housing. He's raised great issues and argues vehemently and passionately on issues. And on this issue, I just wish when we had appointed him, I was so excited when his name was nominated to be on the Affordable Housing Trust. I wish we had nominated him and said, yes, Rick Levitt will vote for him, but needs to recuse himself on the Buckley property. Because in my mind, it's a strictly legal issue. Is there an appearance of a conflict? He is a direct abutter, God love him, and he's been supportive of its purchase, but he's a direct abutter of the Buckley property. In my mind, it's very simple. He's an abutter, and there's an appearance of a conflict, and I'm not going to vote for the waiver. That being said, I'm horribly conflicted about it. But it's not a matter of emotion. It's a matter of, is he an abutter? Yes. And is there the appearance? It may not be there's no actual conflict. Is there an appearance of a conflict? Can folks say, why the heck does he get to vote? He butts that property. He shouldn't be voting. He shouldn't be weighing in. That, in my mind, is the most material issue here. And Rick knows I'm a tremendous supporter, and I respect his opinion greatly. And I would hope that he would continue to weigh in as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for every other wonderful project we have going here. And this is not a matter of who wants what for density when. It's a matter of, is there an appearance of a conflict here? And I believe there is. And I have to do my job as a select board member.
Just not to sidetrack, Pat, can you just clarify my interpretation of our of how we're making a determination. Am I correct in saying that we are first making a determination whether Mr. Levitt has a real or perceived conflict of interest, and then that second tier is that conflict of interest more substantially detrimental to his ability to serve? Is that a correct interpretation? I mean, I do apologize, you are being paid for this opinion, but that was a joke. I hope everyone can laugh at that.
You're not a lawyer, you can't.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't get paid enough to be.
Your interpretation is fair, Mr. Chair. Let me just try to summarize this succinctly as I can. The core issue here is the application of General Laws, Chapter 268A, Section 19, which in essence says any municipal employee who has a financial interest in a particular matter before, in this case, his board, has conflict of interest under that particular provision. However, there is a clause in Section 19, subsection B, which I will read for the benefit of the board. B, it shall not be a violation of this section if the municipal employee first advises the official responsible for appointment to his position of the nature and circumstances of the particular matter and makes full disclosure of such financial interest and receives in advance a written determination made by that official that the interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from the employee. As I construe that, that is an exemption. It exempts any such employee who the appointing authority believes does not have such a substantial interest in the matter as to undermine or impair his ability to act impartially in the matter from having a conflict of interest under Section 19. Now, the Ethics Commission has absolutely established that anyone who owns property directly abutting property that is a subject matter before him as a municipal employee is presumed to have a conflict of interest. A presumption can be rebutted. The Ethics Commission has acknowledged that. The Ethics Commission issued an advisory specifically on this particular issue. It's advisory number 05-02, entitled Voting on Matters Affecting Abutting or Nearby Property. In Section 6 of that advisory, under the heading Municipal Employees, the advisory provides, and I quote, as noted above, an appointed municipal employee may choose to abstain from a matter in which she has a prohibited financial interest, and if she does so, need not make a disclosure. In order to participate in a matter involving abutting property, a municipal employee must disclose in writing to her appointing official the nature and circumstances of the matter and the financial interest. The appointing official who receives the disclosure described above may assume responsibility for the matter, assign responsibility for the matter to another employee, or provide the municipal employee with a written determination allowing her to participate in the matter. So it's clear to me that the Ethics Commission, while certainly acknowledging that ownership of abutting property presents a strong presumption of conflict of interest, I believe that the statute, Section 19, provides an express exemption from that conflict, and that this board, as the appointing official of members of the Affordable Housing Trust, does have the authority to make a determination as to whether or not the applicant's interest is so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from the employee. So that's the determination, Mr. Chairman, that the board has to make. Based on all the circumstances presented to you and the disclosure presented by Mr. Levitt and the circumstances that are known to members of the board, you have to determine whether this ownership of real property abutting the Buckley parcel is such a substantial interest, financial interest, Mr. Levitt, that it would likely be deemed to affect the integrity of the service which he would render to the town as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust.
All right, thank you very much. Dean?
I feel like we're voting on whether to grant the Rotary a license. I was the deciding vote on that one. I have a question for Pat, and then I want to speak to this. So Pat, have you back on?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I want to focus on the phrase deemed likely to affect. Are appearances a factor that the select board could take into consideration in determining whether the conflict is deemed likely to affect?
An appearance of conflict of interest is regulated by a different section of Chapter 268A, Section 23. An employee can rebut any appearance of conflict merely by filing a disclosure with the town clerk stating what his appearance of conflict is premised upon. I believe that's been done in this particular case, so I don't think that the appearance of conflict is really an issue. The real issue is whether or not the financial interest that Mr. Levitt is presumed to have in this matter would be such that it would affect the integrity of his service to the town.
It's the word deemed that gives me some pause, because to me that connotes an element of judgment.
Absolutely. I think it does vest discretion.
And I'm not
in the
sure whose
board.
judgment it's supposed to be. Is it the select board's judgment? Is the community's judgment? I haven't researched it. I'm familiar with Section 23, but
I believe that is the select board as the appointing official.
Okay.
It's your judgment because it appears specifically within Section 19B1, which is the exemption provision.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. So, Mr. Chairman, despite what one of the speakers said previously, I don't really think this is a red line case. I think you can make an argument on either side. And I frankly have attempted to do that myself. I sound like Peter Kokolas, who always said he argued with himself, but I actually did construct arguments on either side. I nominated Rick Levitt for appointment to the Affordable Housing Board, knowing his long-term advocacy for and commitment to housing in the town of Chatham. With my experience as both a government and private sector attorney and giving advice on the Massachusetts Conflict of Interest Law, I was aware of the potential of a conflicting interest in regard to the abutter status to the Buckley property. But the Affordable Housing Trust deals with multiple parcels, and I expected the issue of a possible conflict with respect to the Buckley property would need to be dealt with. I think it was absolutely appropriate for town staff to bring the issue forward. I have not seen any emails, but I understand that they exist. In such cases, I've always believed it's the best course on the part of the affected municipal employee, that the best course of action is always voluntary recusal. And I would have preferred that to be the case here. And of course, it's certainly open to Rick to still choose even now to withdraw his request for this board to make a determination and recuse from the trust's participation in regards to the Buckley property, but continue his involvement on the other parcels and those that might come forward in the future. But that's not what is before us. He has exercised his right under the statute to make disclosure and to seek a determination from the select board. In my time on the select board, and I'm with Mr. Metters, I'm in my third year of my third term, and I don't know whether I'll be here next May or not. But in that time, we have experienced Section 19 issues on previous occasions. 2 such prior instances come to the fore of my memory. One involving a membership interest in a private entity with a matter before a municipal body. The other involving an abutter applying for appointment to a municipal body whose sole charge related to the affected property. In each instance, the result was non-participation. In the former instance, the Select Board voted to not to grant the exemption. And I think the Select Board should be consistently mindful of such prior instances. I believe that ownership of a directly abutting parcel is a conflicting interest. The test set forth in the statute is whether the conflicting interest is, as has been mentioned, not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the town may expect from the municipal employee. A directly abutting property, in my opinion, is a substantial interest within the meaning of the statute, because property values are affected by what happens on a neighboring property, namely the potential development of the Buckley property in this case. As has been pointed out, the phrase deemed likely connotes an element of judgment that is distinct from mere appearances. While Rick's genuine and long-standing involvement in housing, which long predates the town's acquisition of the Buckley property, and which I know of personally because we've had several meetings over the years, while that involvement lends support for the appearance that the town's best interests would not be affected by his participation, notwithstanding the potential conflicting interest, it nonetheless remains for me that the interest would be adjudged or deemed likely to affect the integrity of services that may be expected. This is not a judgment as to Rick Levitt's personal integrity or character. Rather, it is an attempt at a dispassionate analysis and application of the statutory test to the circumstances. And I would say, ironically, I suspect that my own thoughts on the development of the property, particularly with respect to density, are similar to those of Mr. Levitt, and I hope we will have an opportunity in the near future as a Select Board to weigh in on that. So in summary, I feel I have to vote no on the request for determination, and I do so with some regret, but that's my analysis of the issue, and that's where I come down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. DeCastro. All right. Final thoughts from the board? Anyone entertain a mic?
I want to endorse particularly the concluding thoughts that Dean just rendered. This is an objective thing. It's not about, Rick is a person of the highest integrity. I have no doubt of that in any context. And as I said at the outset, it is exceedingly painful for me to be in the position that I'm in and have to do what I think I have to do. But as Dean said, it's an objective determination of what is a substantial interest here, and I cannot but conclude that there is such a substantial interest. So I thank you for your comments, Dean.
I was going to make one final comment. I mean, I do agree, as a direct abutter, by definition, it is a conflict. But I do not believe it's more substantial, because I believe if Mr. Levitt lived in North Chatham, whatever, I don't think his comments would differ any different. He's been extremely consistent for years on his comments and his process. And that's the determination, I got to make from my evaluation of him as his character and whether he could fulfill his duty. So I will entertain a motion so we can get this process moving along.
Move approval of the application for the waiver of the appearance of a conflict of interest as submitted by Mr. Levitt.
Do I hear a second for voting purposes at least?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Select Board Member DeCastro,
No.
Select Board Member Davis,
No.
Select Board Member Dykens,
No.
Select Board Member Shell,
No.
and the Chair says aye, so. All right. Okay. Item E, review results of Community Communications Survey, Communications Manager and Community Engagement Officer, Shauna Neely. Welcome back.
Thank you. So. Okay. Just wanted to start out by saying, to understand the results, I just want everyone to understand that, and in part of the survey, all of the respondents indicated that they did subscribe to one form or another of communication channel from the town, so it's slightly skewed to those who are already engaged. Just a disclaimer at the front. There were 90 responses received between November 3rd and December 31st, which isn't a lot, but it was something. It's a good place to start as we're looking just for a baseline information first. The links to the survey was included on the town's website, in the main sheet, on the town Recreation and Council on Aging social media accounts. There was a notice of it on the Chatham TV bulletin board, and we had flyers with scannable QR codes posted in town offices, the annex, community center, library, and some businesses that have bulletin boards. So first off, we just started looking for some very basic demographic information. As you can see, no one under the age of 41 responded to the survey, and 77% of the respondents were age 61 or older. Primarily full-time residents made responses to the survey. I will say that there are some submissions that included multiple responses to this, such as I'm a full-time resident and I own a business in town, or I work in town and I'm a full-time resident. So there's some more responses than 90 to that question. We asked how often people seek out information on government news, and 73% of the respondents reported looking for information on a matter at least weekly, if not more often. We asked separate questions about where the survey respondents were most likely and least likely to look for that information. The blue bars indicate the channels that the respondents are looking at are most likely to look for. Orange bars are those that are least likely to visit. And this information will help to guide where we are distributing information now and which underutilized channels we'll promote as available sources of information. Asked respondents to indicate which town accounts they're already subscribing to. And as you can see, we do have multiple channels available to us to disseminate information. And we have already begun cross-posting information on multiple channels throughout that are of widespread interest to the community. How often they want to hear from us? 84% of the respondents want to hear from us at least every week, if not more often. And we asked how often, if the respondents think they're receiving the town news too often, not often enough, or just often enough. And clearly no one thought they were hearing from us too often, so we can always increase the amount of information we are putting out. This asks, again, one of those questions where they can respond multiple ways. And what we're looking for is what information they find valuable. As you can see, the top ones are news and updates on town projects, town and community events, and emergency alerts are the top three, with public health matters and general updates from the select board and town manager is the next highly valued. Ask the same question, but what, on those same categories, what more information do they want on? And then compared the two, and as you can see, the areas where the blue bars, which is what the value of the information, and the orange bars, which is what they want more of, when those are both the long ones, that's where we really need to concentrate on our efforts. And it's on news and updates on town projects, where both of the orange and blue bars are the longest. town and community events second. And then as you can see, something like elections and town meeting voter information, it's highly valued, but the respondents aren't saying that we need to put a lot more out on that. So we're doing a pretty good job in that area. But it's where the orange bars and the blue bars are the longest that we want to really concentrate that information. Next two questions were about the respondents' use of the town's website. 87% indicated that they visit the website monthly or more often. And this is really informative to the staff to make sure that we are updating our department and committee websites on a regular basis so that the information is current and refreshed, at least monthly, if not more often. Top 4 reasons for respondents to visit the town website are to find meeting schedules, agendas and minutes, to make a payment, find contact information, and to find information on projects or events. So this is also valuable to our IT team when they are reviewing our current site for improvements and upgrades to make it more user-friendly. We asked how often the respondents attended or watched meetings. Of all, 60 indicated they had attended or watched a town board or commission meeting in the last 12 months. However, of those 60, only 24 provided comments. So 26% of the respondents had actively participated in a meeting in the last 12 months. And knowing this, we can try to formulate strategies to increase participation, to hear from a greater number of voices on town issues. With 64% of the respondents preferring to attend meetings virtually, I think it's important that we continue to provide hybrid meetings and facilitate remote participation for the public in as many town events as we can. How satisfied are they with our current communications? And hopefully we're going to get better. But even so, as we are just embarking on a really comprehensive and strategic communications plan, 54% were at least satisfied or highly satisfied with our communications in general, and 71% were satisfied or highly satisfied with our emergency communications, which is very important, with only 12% being dissatisfied or highly dissatisfied with general communications, and again, very important, only less than 0.5% being dissatisfied with our emergency communications. Our final question was an open-ended question, and we just generated a word cloud from those responses, and as you can see, projects was the top thing mentioned, and specifically sewer project was noted several times. So it gives you an idea of what was mentioned in those comments. So I just want to thank everyone who did participate, and hopefully this will just form a baseline for us for looking in the future to what we are improving on or where we need to continue to improve on our communications with the town. It's already started to inform how some of the things that we're doing. We've launched the town's Instagram account on the 20th in the hopes of reaching a slightly younger demographic. We are underway on a final internal review on a process for a project communications process, which includes identifying stakeholders at the outset and scaled outreach into all project planning so that we are on that. It's baked in from the beginning. We also have a new web page that's under construction that lists all of the links to town accounts, social media accounts, notify me for emergency and non-emergency communications, committee postings, and that's going to be a separate page on our website called Stay Connected, and that information is also going to be inserted into the March tax bills, so that will reach all property owners with those listings. And that's about it. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Comments from the board? Shereen.
I wish you had more data, unfortunately, just 90. Again, as you start to build your outreach plans, obviously that will help.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that, the website's the anchor to everything in the communications, but I can't tell you how, well, I can tell you how important it is, the main sheet is, that weekly, check-in, here we are, this is what we're doing. I think it's really engaging, and it sort of encompasses, snippets of the life in the town that draws the interest. And social media, obviously, you obviously glean from that to the social media pages and stuff like that. Since you just started the Instagram page. So how are you going to get that out there to the public that it's there?
Well, intentionally did a very soft launch at first because I wasn't
I
intending
like
to
to.
launch it. But we are seeing followers growing, so that'll probably be featured in the main sheet this week, and just getting the word out. It seems that I haven't had to do much with it, and it's already growing, so.
I just have one more comment, and I just want to say that, since I've gotten on the board, the communications piece to our town has, really grown and matured into something that I think is really beneficial to the townspeople. So, thank you.
Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shauna, nice presentation. I just had one question with respect to your final slide. You don't have to put it up, but projects and sewer. Did anyone who mentioned sewer drill down and talk about grinder pumps?
No.
I was curious.
No, it was more about scheduling and when the sewer project would come to their neighborhood, or when they would need to connect.
Okay.
Or how long they would have to connect, so
Okay.
that kind of information.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Shireen's already adverted to this, but I just want to ask, how do you feel? I mean, 90 is not as good as we would have hoped, I guess would be one way to put it. How do you feel, and feel free to tell me very good, but the reliability of that as being representative of the wider group that we're really trying to reach?
I think it would take at least another 6 months to then maybe resurvey to see how we're doing and see if it's changed very much. I'm not surprised at the projects being the focus of people's interest in wanting more information on that. But I do very much feel that it's already people who are engaged, and it's reaching those who aren't.
Yeah, okay.
That's the challenge.
Okay. And I should have said at the outset, thanks for a very interesting and good information presentation. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and, maybe 6 months or so, or reissue it and break that 100 mark.
Thanks.
All right. FY 2025 budget review for the 2024 annual town meeting article review. Start with town department budget presentation for our public safety, police and fire. I guess.
Hi, good evening. Carrie Mazzarell, Finance Director. Tonight, the Public Safety is presenting their requests for fiscal year 2025 budgets, operating and capital. The Public Safety budget is presented at around $8.1 million for FY '25, with an increase of $304,654 over the current fiscal year. Some of the capital items that they'll be talking about that they requested are portable radio equipment and body-worn camera. Those are for the police department. Protective clothing, mobile and portable radios, self-contained breathing apparatus, and admin vehicle for the fire department. The police department budget presented tonight includes a departmental budget of around $3.5 million, which is 3.47% increase from 2024, with 3.2 in salaries and $278,540 in operating expenses. The fire department budget presented tonight includes a departmental budget of $4.5 million, up 4.26% from 2024, which is $4 million in salaries and wages are actually, salaries and wages and $490,359 in operating expenses. I just want to make it clear, I have a typo on there. I put $409,000 and it should be $490 for the fire department. I did notice that, sorry. I have the fire chief and the police chief here with me tonight to present their budgets. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, do you need, you remember all that?
Good.
Okay.
Good evening, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mike Anderson, I'm the Chief of Police, and with me here tonight is my Deputy Chief Lou Malzone. He is responsible for Special Services, and Lieutenant Andy Goddard, he's responsible for the Patrol Division. So anything that you see really front of the house is in charge of, is Andy Goddard's responsibility. And before I start, I just want to say that I want to recognize Carrie. She's a new member of the team, and this was the first budget she's worked with me, and she's been great. So I really appreciate her professionalism, and I want to thank you. So real quick, I will be brief as I can for time. What you see in front of you is our calls for service. And this is pretty much the same presentation that I'm going to give to the Finance Committee. Everybody's curious for our calls for service. And that's just a 5-year snapshot. You will see that we are in the third year of a very positive decline for calls for service. But I just want the board and I want the community to know that even though that we are in a very good downward trend of criminal activity and crime, we do train and we do equip your police department to be ready for that next response that we hope doesn't occur in our community. And that training and that equipment is thanks to you. So I do want to thank you for your support by providing us with the funds for training and equipment so that we are ready for, unfortunately, if that trend starts to go upwards. I just want you to know that your police department is prepared for that. It's always interesting to see a snapshot of what we do for calls for service in a year. That's a calendar year. And that top bold-faced number is what I consider are the calls for service. When people call the police department, that could be anything for an assist to a major crime. That 7,205 is a representation of the police calls when they call us, not anything proactive that we do when we're not answering a call for service. That's reflective in some other numbers. That second number, 3,662, are community policing interactions. That is 100% officer initiated. That could be anything from talking to someone in a store, providing directions, any type of positive police assistance contact. We try to capture that and log that just to show that even though we are not responding to a calls for service, we are out there proactively engaging the citizens of the town. The bottom number is significant also. That building property checks, that 12,000, that's a big number, but that just shows what happens when you're probably at home or what happens when you're probably asleep. Most of these building and property checks occur in the evening and the overnight hours. And in 1 year's time, we've documented over 1,200 officer-initiated building and property checks. You will see that we stop a lot of vehicles. We enforce a lot of traffic enforcement actions with 1,975. 544 motor vehicle stops last calendar year, and you will see that we are not strict. Out of that 544, we've only issued 48 motor vehicle citations. So again, we're more about education than enforcement. And again, a big number is the town bylaw violations usually occur in the summer months, and those usually reflect the quality of life type calls, the parking, the noise, the disturbances, and the alcohol in public. This is just what the current police department staffing levels are. Myself, my deputy chief, and my lieutenant make up the command staff of 3. We have 5 sergeants, we have 4 on patrol, and we have 1 sergeant assigned permanently as a school resource officer. Currently, we have slots for 14 police officers. However, at the time of this presentation, I have 3 vacancies for full-time police officer, which I'm trying to fill. And on top of that, I have a 4th officer on a long-term injury, and I do not expect him back probably until April or May. We currently have on our roster 2 reserve officers based on the new post standards. They are fully trained. They technically can perform the duties of a full-time police officer, but the way that they work in my organization, they do not work patrol shifts. They're usually assigned for traffic details or supplemental patrols. On the right, you'll see the boldface number. We're sworn 22. So what that means is from the chief down to the lowest patrol officer, we have a budgeted for 22 sworn police officers, myself all the way down to the bottom. 28, that number includes 4 civilian dispatchers, which we are currently full-staffed, 1 full-time civilian animal control officer, and that position is staffed, and 1 civilian administrative assistant, and that position is staffed. Just a quick snapshot of what the police fleet looks like. Currently, we have on the road 18 vehicles. Real quick, just 6 Mark Ford Explorer police interceptors, and their years range from 2017 to 2021. And we have 2 scheduled for replacement from last year's budget. And again, Lieutenant Goddard is my fleet captain. Any specific fleet questions he can answer, but he will tell you that 2 of these vehicles are currently on order, and they are being painted as we speak to replace 2 that were approved last fiscal year. We have 1 marked Mitsubishi Outlander. That's our electric vehicle. Currently, that's assigned to the school resource officer. We have 1 marked 2010 Ford F-150 pickup truck, and that was approved last budget to be replaced by a 2024 F-250. Currently, the VIN has been established, and that's in the production line. We're at the mercy of the production from Ford. We have a 2012 Ford Econoline van, animal control van, and that replacement, which is the 2023 Ford Transit, should be here, ready to go tomorrow. We have a fleet of 3 unmarked, a 2021 Ford Expedition, which is mine, a 2019 Explorer for the deputy chief, and the 2018 Chevy Tahoe for the lieutenant. And just to note that those 3 vehicles are all take-home vehicles. They are fully equipped, ready to respond we do respond from our homes, and we do respond off-duty. The only thing separating them from the marked vehicles is they're not equipped to carry prisoners or detainees, and they're not marked. And the rest of the fleet rounds out, as you can see, again, 18 total vehicles. So on the budget this year, the first thing, the capital item we're looking for is 2 annual replacement marked vehicles. The total is going to be $110,000 this fiscal year. And again, this is a regular replacement of the police cruisers to keep the fleet up and running for emergency response, routine calls for service and patrol duties. And again, we asked for this, and you've been very gracious enough to grant us this every year. By rotating and replacing the marked police line cruisers on a regular basis, it maintains the vehicle's value at a regular 2-year trade-in. It maximizes the savings, and by keeping the mileage low and the repair costs low. Does anybody have any questions for that?
Questions or comments from the board? Mike?
Do I understand these are 55,000 a copy?
55,000 roughly each.
Roughly, yeah.
Where we save the money, right now, Ford has not changed the body style, so everything you see currently inside the interior of that cruiser can be removed and replaced into the new cruiser. That's where we save a ton of money. When Ford makes a little body change, that's where they get us, where we have to now reorder a new cage, a new console. So right now, we should be good to go with a full replacement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thanks, Corey. So Chief, we have 2 coming from last year's budget.
Correct.
And an additional 2 in this year's budget.
I am requesting 2 for this year's budget, yes.
And how many do we have in total?
We have 6 marked in total.
So at the end of this year, we'll have 4 brandy new.
Yes. Well, it all depends, again, if these get approved at the budget for fiscal '25, we go into the order process, and then again, we get put into the queue, and it could be several months for them to show up. Like, it's been almost a year for these 2 Mark ones to show up from last year's budget. Oops. So this was initially an operational expense, but Kerry and I had a conversation. We thought it would be best placed on a capital item only because of the expense. So real briefly, we have a Motorola APX radio system. And in layman's terms, what that means is we can talk to the fire department, we can talk to Cape police departments, we can talk to Cape fire departments. Everybody can talk with each other, and everybody is compatible on the system in Massachusetts. Most of these APX 6000 radios were purchased or replaced in 2022 with a grant. And from that grant, we received 26 radios from a grant. Out of those 26, 24 have been issued to the officers. 2 of these radios go into cruisers in case they are needed as backups, because those cruisers could be used as, like we could consider as a mobile command post. The problem is they require maintenance and they require upkeep. What we've done in the past, last year we were awarded positions for 4 community service officers, and they were given a radio that was our old radio, which was a Motorola MTS 2000. The 2000 radios are no longer going to be able to be used in conjunction with the 6000. They're not going to be able to be programmed. They're going to fade away. There's no more replacement parts for them. So whatever we had, I think we had how many MTX 2000s? About 22 to 24. 2000s. And they've all been used past their life experience. So anything that we need to add or replace is going to have to be an APX 6000. Unfortunately, they come with a significant cost. Each APX 6000 is roughly $5,300. I'm asking for 3. I'm asking for 3 for $15,900, and that consists of what you see there is the radio, the charger, the battery, and the microphone. It's a substantial price to pay, but if you look at the police officer's portable radio, it's kind of the most important thing that they wear on their belt. We don't utilize communications through cell phones. We utilize radio communications, and every time somebody steps outside of the vehicle or outside of the station, we have our portable radios. So the third capital request that we have is a body-worn camera program. I'll give you a brief history. In 2020, the Mass State Legislature created the Law Enforcement Body Camera Task Force in conjunction with the Police Reform Act of 2020. When POST was created, substantial reforms in police certification and training was rolled out. In addition to that was the Body Camera Task Force. Their recommendation was their belief that the financial impact of a body-worn camera system on respective police departments is significant. While the implementation of a program serves communities, it requires significant financial support to launch and maintain this program. It's the consensus of the task force that individual police departments seek adequate financial support from all available funding sources, including cities and towns, as well as the Commonwealth, to budget for a body-worn camera program accordingly. So why am I here tonight with this as a capital item? In 2020, when this legislative task force was originated, it was the hope of Cape police chiefs and police departments that these would be purchased by the state. Usually when this happens, the state purchases these items in mass quantity and provides it to the Commonwealth or the police departments. The first rollout is on the state, and then it's up to the towns to pay for any replacement or upgrades or additions. That never happened. So we're at the mercy of having to purchase our own body camera program. Since 2020, a couple of things have happened. Significantly, the price for these cameras has gone down. And the cost for the maintaining and the support of the software and hardware has gone down. And it's become easier to maintain in-house, and it's become cheaper to purchase. Why are we waiting until this year? We could have asked for it last year, but quite frankly, I was looking at other Cape departments when they purchased their own and when they rolled out their own. I wanted to see what worked and I wanted to see what didn't work. I think the time and the place is good now that we can purchase these with a cost that I think is reasonable, and the cost is $150,000. It's in your worksheet. That $150,000 would be enough to cover body cameras for everybody on the police department 22, myself included. It also includes the hardware and the software to maintain it, the storage to keep it, and the training and the ability to download it and present it to either the courts, the public, or the media. Just some side notes on the body camera. I think we're in a very unique place right now with the union. I think one of the things that the body camera will hopefully capture, and I think the union agrees with me, and I hope you do too, obviously it shows the adherence to policies and procedures, it shows the officer's actions or inactions, but one of the things that is positive, it decreases the amount of frivolous complaints that come across my desk or Cape Cod Police Chief's desks. We don't have a lot of complaints, luckily, at the Chatham Police Department. However, the majority that we do get, thankfully, we're able to exonerate. And this, in my opinion, helps us limit frivolous complaints against police officers. I will say that we are in contract negotiations now, and I know I can't speak on that, but I have met with the union, and this is one of the items that the union is willing to accept. These cameras the union wants. There's no pushback from the union, and I think that they want these cameras as much as I do, and hopefully as much as you do. Any questions before I move on?
You said 22 cameras, that's your
Yes.
current inventory? Sworn.
Yep.
You'd hope for getting some, is it viable to go a little bit higher now, or is that 22 the number? I mean, do you go 25, 26?
Well, we could look at the pricing options. Luckily, the three big manufacturers for the body cameras that we would be looking at are all on the state bid, so they're already there. I don't want to say that we've made our mind up on which product we're going to purchase, but there are some advantages to some as compared to others. And I think if when it came time for a purchase order, we could look to see what 25 would cost or 22. Would we go higher with 25 and then equip our community service officers with a camera? That's something that we could do. Could we equip our animal control officer with one? That's something that we could look at.
All right.
But primarily, the minimum would be 22, just to cover the sworn police officers.
Jeff?
Thank you, Corey. So Chief, this is a new program for Chatham?
It is.
And the other towns, surrounding towns have the same program?
5 departments have them now. 6 are in the process as we are looking forward to getting them in fiscal '25.
And so the operational nuances here, you wear them all the time, and you let folks know they're being taped or whatever, they're being, what are the First Amendment rights here?
Usually we would let them know that, for example, on a traffic stop, we would say, hey, just so you know, you're being audio and video recorded.
Got it.
In a meeting such as this, depending upon what our policy would dictate, obviously you could, this public meeting, I would have the ability to take this camera off. If I was meeting with Jill in a private meeting, I have the ability to take that camera off. What we would do is really best practice, see what other departments do. The biggest thing right now, as far as policy alignment, is what the Mass Criminal Justice Training Academy and what the Mass Chiefs of Police best practice is, comes down to, if there's an incident that is captured on the body camera and now the officer has to write his or her report, some schools of thought say the police officer writes the report and then reviews the camera. Some say you view the footage first and then write your report. There's an argument either way. It's not hard and fast what the state demands. The state requests you do not watch your camera before you write your report. Lots of my peers on the Cape do not subscribe to that. They subscribe that the officer is allowed to watch the camera prior to writing the report.
Yeah, interesting.
It basically comes down to what the officer's perception is on why they made a decision, so they're not operating for the camera.
So you're proposing to buy 22 all at once. How about when at the end of their useful life? Any idea how long they're gonna last? I
don't. I think the average lifespan, we have tasers that have lasted us almost 10 years.
We never use them, I hope.
Well, again, we hope.
We're gonna be using these all the time.
We would use these all the time, and I believe the life expectancy from my colleagues further down Cape is 5 to 6 before a replacement.
Okay, I'm just thinking of just the cost to replace them as they wear out over time. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Mike?
Yeah, I would think, by the way, just off the top of my head, that you're gonna have technical obsolescence as opposed to their wearing out, but that's way over my pay grade. My question is this: I looked at the statistics of everything the police department is doing, all the encounters, all the criminal stuff, the whole 7,200 at the top, 3,600 down below. And if you look at the 3 or 4 year trend that you identified as going down, I just kind of conclude that verifies my feeling that Chatham's pretty safe. These body cameras, in the grand scheme of things, I think, if you look at the whole country, it's a great development. And for the reasons you've articulated, it seems that it's a very good development here, and one that you should be taking advantage of, and I would be supportive of it. But I want to ask you, just by way of support for that, you mentioned one of the big arguments for it is the reduction in having to deal with public complaints, essentially. How big a deal is that? Have you got numbers for that, or is that something that really is a major obstacle in your grand scheme of things?
That's a great question. The numbers are very low. I will say I'm very, very happy to say that the calendar year has been has been a good year for complaints against Chatham police officers, because that number is very low. I will say that if let's say there were 3, but if you're one of the officers who receives that complaint and then has to go through the professional standards process, knowing that you could be exonerated from a body camera footage, it puts that officer at ease, as opposed to having to wait until the process that he said, she said, is investigated. What do we do now? We have supervisors that use their own cell phone cameras or department-issued cell phone cameras. Not to take up too much time, we had a case a few years ago where I arrived on scene as the third officer, and I could see it being a volatile call. I just took my own phone out, and I filmed the interaction with the officer and the member of the public. It involved the fire department, involved some other departments. Later that day, that individual's wife came into the police department to file charges against the officer who assaulted the husband, and I met with the complainant, and I was just able to play the tape, and I said, "Is that the individual you're referring to?" And geez, I'm very sorry, that's not what I heard, and I'm sorry to have wasted your time, and I'm sorry to put you in this position. So, again, even though that number might be low, it's important if you're the officer.
And I assume that the other side of that is that you would anticipate some elevation of the overall performance.
And accountability, yeah, absolutely. Accountability, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. This is now back to operational. In our temporary wages, last year, again, I'll try to be brief. From what I've heard from this board and members of the public and members of the community, the merchants, our community service officer program was a success. We're looking to expand it. We're looking to expand it by one more position, and that increase would be $13,000 for that additional purchase, individual community service officer, and that would bring our temporary wages for community service officer increases of $13,000 to $62,000. And again, I wouldn't ask for it if it wasn't asked for by members of the public. And I hope you would agree with me that this program was a success, and that one additional person would be used not to replace somebody from the Main Street area, but now that extra community service officer could be available to be in a vehicle to go to other satellite locations, to beaches, to landings, to other events that we have. And I'm looking for your support with that, too. I appreciate that.
I think this program this summer was extremely successful. They were visible, they were engaged. All of the individuals that served as the community service officers, their personalities were positive. They were, I really did not hear a single bad thing about the program. I had more compliments or just positive, input from it consistently throughout the summer. So I think this was a success.
And I'm very proud to announce, it looks like we have 3 of the 4 returning. So we're very happy with that. Okay. Also, part of the budget here is animal control. I will say that the animal control officer budget is a level funded budget, except for her contractual pay increase. There's the animal control calls for service. She does a great job. She's very busy. I just had a very nice letter from a citizen regarding her taking care of a squirrel problem in somebody's home. It was a very nice email. She'll be equipped with a brand-new vehicle tomorrow. These are some of the calls for service that she dealt with last year. You can see that 862 animal control officer calls for one person is a busy year. And then real quick, I will just go into, I think I can, nope.
Yep, you just want to escape and go down here. There you go.
Perfect.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're
I'll just talk very briefly about some of these operational expense increases. Currently, that increase is broken out into wages, so that 2.2 million doesn't look like the chief and the deputy make 2.1 million and give the rest out to everybody else. The administrative wages are 487,000. The union's wages are 1.5 million, and the dispatch union is 258. That's the contractual increase. Temporary wages we just spoke about with the community service officers. The longevity, you'll notice, has increased 17. Again, it's not 17% is a big percentage, but it's not a big increase really from the 13 to the 15. And this is a positive increase. This just means we have retention of our senior officers, and that's a good thing, and that's what we want. That's a number we like to see. Purchase of services increased a little bit, 6.4%. The two really big ticket items that caused this, one is our booking and holding facility has to be inspected yearly by the state and the Department of Health and the inspectors of Department of Youth Services. The building was built in 2011, and now some of the equipment, hardware in the cell block needs to be maintained to be able to pass inspection. So what we've done is we've contracted a private service who's licensed to do the maintenance, which is a little bit more maintenance than what buildings and grounds can provide for us, and it's a small fee of $800. The second increase is we've just started our state accreditation process, and part of that accreditation process, which brings our policies up to what we consider to be best practice within the state. We're very proud of that. However, we need software to put our policies in to be updated and reviewed. This software is accepted by the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. It's called Power DMS. The first software that we purchased, it's 3 bills. The first installment is $5,800, which we have taken care of. The next installment of $58 in January of 2025 and $6,400 in January of 2026 will be taken on by Town IT, which when they come in front of you, you'll see their IT budget has increased substantially, and some of that money that we have had has been taken on by IT. Uniforms have gone up. We just used the 4% because right now, at the time of this budget, the consumer price index is 4%. And again, a police uniform equipment, we're at the mercy for the suppliers. They increase, we have to stay with them. $2,400 for meetings, dues, and travels. And what really this means is a lot of the members of the department belong to professional organizations, associations, and foundations. And over the past few years, the membership of these have increased. These organizations provide guidance, support, not just to the heads of the organization, but to the department as a whole. And with these departmental operations and certifications, membership to these organizations are crucial, in my opinion, to the professional and personal and operational development of the department. And again, their bills increase, so we have to stay with that. And that's it. I appreciate your time, and if anybody has any questions, and again, I appreciate your support. I appreciate the board's support.
We appreciate all your efforts in the work of your police force.
Thank you.
Sincerely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I have
please.
a couple of questions.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Just 2 questions. With respect to accreditation, has the department not been accredited up to now?
We have not.
So it's a good thing to do. The other has to do with your gap in staffing. You're down 3 positions. I think the fire department is fully staffed. Chief, I think, said that before. And your community service program was terrific, the summer program. And I read your description of it, and there was a suggestion that that is a potential for further recruitment. I know the fire department has initiated a program with Cape Tech. Do you think there's something that could be done in terms of police recruitment or development in that area as well going forward? If you're pretty stretched out right now because you're not fully staffed, but do you think there is any fruitfulness in looking at that?
We're at the mercy of the post commission, as the fire department is not.
I see.
So for us to complement our staffing, we have to do two things. We have to hire somebody off the street and send them to an MPTC post-approved police academy. The pros of that is we hire this person from day one. They're exposed to our organization, our cultures, our norms, and we have the ability to mold them into the kind of police officer that we feel would be a good fit for not only the department, but for our community. The problem with that is police academies are limited. Everybody needs a seat at one, and they're very long. We missed the latest Plymouth Police Academy, which starts, I think, the first week of February. We didn't have any candidates able to be enrolled in that. Our next bite of the apple is hopefully a Cape Cod Police Academy, which starts in July. If we're successful in, let's say we find 3 candidates and put them in the pipeline July, they're not going to graduate till on or about Memorial Day of next year. Then they go to the field training program, and maybe they're ready to work on their own August, September, October. So what we're left is getting a lateral transfer from another police department. So our 3 vacancies right now, one of them was a retirement, and one of them was somebody, he lateraled to another police department. So we're currently trying to make the police department an attractive place for somebody to come and lateral and leave their police department, hopefully Cape Police Department, so they maintain housing on the Cape, to come to us. And I think the town manager and I are working as hard as we can and as best we can to fill those positions, either from an entry level or make the department and make the town attractive so it attracts a lateral.
Thank you, Chief. I mean, I fully support your budgetary requests, as I expect I'm going to do the same with the fire department. It's a very challenging, I think everybody on this board agrees, it's a very challenging job to be a good police officer today, and we really appreciate the work that you and your entire department do.
It's good to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Final, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Yeah, Chief, ditto. Appreciate all the hard work of you and your staff, Deputy Chief. I have one quick operational question, not to be a pain in the butt, but do we have an officer assigned at the middle school every day when school gets out? Because the traffic lines up there on Coral Road, and it's becoming, I've heard a little bit of a sore point about it just once in a while.
The answer...
Not to belabor it.
No. Our school resource officer's primary location is the middle school. We have been working with the middle school to address that pickup and drop-off traffic issue for many years. The pickleball construction changed that traffic plan for a while. We have ideas of what we think would work, and the school has ideas of what they think would work, and the parents have ideas of what they think works better for them. We're just trying to do the best we can, and I think at the completion of this year, and once that pickleball project is completed, when we will revisit that pickup and drop-off traffic plan.
I think it needs to be a goal to improve it, to improve exactly that. I'm very supportive of your budget and the capital budget as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Appreciate
all your efforts.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chief, and
thank you.
You have a lot of support from this board. Chief Tavano.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Select Board, and Chatham residents. I'm Justin Tavano, the Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director. Thank you for having me tonight to present our FY25 budget. My presentation is going to be pretty similar in format to the police chief's. I'll be presenting actually 4 budgets tonight: the fire department budget, the emergency management budget, and then 2 small budgets, the Cape and Islands EMS budget and the oil pollution control budget. Just want to start off with a quick opening statement. The fire department's proposing a just over $4.5 million operating budget for FY25, which, as the finance director mentioned before, is a 4.26% increase over the adopted FY24 budget. Most of the budget increases for FY25 are related to personnel expenses. These increases on the personnel side of the budget are primarily contractual, totaling $4,017,265. The increases to the expense side of the budget are mostly either inflationary or due to increases in service contracts and fees, and this accounts for $490,358 of the total FY25 operating budget. Fire department's not seeking any new positions in FY25 and is not proposing any significant changes in services. Calendar year 23 was the busiest on record for the fire department in terms of both total incident responses and total ambulance transports. The additional staff added to our roster in FY22 and FY23, which was supported by most of you on the board, and the Finance Committee, has proven critical in the department's ability to meet the growing needs of the community. The current staff at CFD is the most passionate, dedicated, and motivated that I've witnessed during my employment with the town of Chatham. As the Chief of Department, I'd like to thank the Select Board, the Finance Committee, the Town Manager, Finance Director, and the taxpayers for providing the necessary funding which allows our first responders to perform their duties safely, efficiently, and effectively. And I'd also like to thank my staff for continuing to set the standard for public safety excellence across the Cape and Islands. The emergency management budget request represents a reduction from the FY24 budget, as the vehicle line totaling $2,000 has been removed from the budget. The operating supplies line accounts for a majority of the expense side of that budget. These funds are utilized for a variety of operational expenditures throughout the year and will also be utilized to support our CERT team, our box CERT team. The CERT team, as most of you are aware, is a volunteer organization which has been largely grant funded. However, members have incurred out-of-pocket expenses since the team's inception, and each municipality has been asked to allocate $2,500 annually to support the team. So with that, we will go into our slide presentation. So I'm going to start off with just a kind of a year in review from calendar year 23, just to kind of show you guys what we were up to and how we've grown. So the first graph we're looking at here is just a 10-year look at our total incident data. You'll see 2023 to the far right. So we see a growing trend. Can't figure out what happened in 2018 to make it so busy, but for some reason we had a spike that year. If you kind of take that out and then take out 2020, which was obviously our COVID year when calls dropped, you can see that the trend line kind of has just continued to move up. As I mentioned before, this was our busiest year yet, which only surpassed 2022 last year, which was previously our busiest year. So we continue to grow. The community's needs continue to increase. Similar slide, this is our ambulance transports. Very similar kind of map throughout the last 10 years. Same thing in 2018, we saw kind of this random spike. Calls went down in 2020 during COVID, and they've just continued to increase year after year after year. This looks at our ambulance revenue rather than the calendar year, just to stay consistent with kind of the fiscal component of it. This looks at the fiscal year for the past 10 fiscal years. You can see in FY22 and FY23, we've brought in significantly more ambulance revenue. A lot of variables here. One being improvements probably in our QA and QI programs, our quality assurance and quality improvement programs, which impact the way calls are coded and reported, which has a direct correlation with Medicare's reimbursement, which is a primary source for our ambulance revenue. And another significant variable is the increase in transports over the years. This is an incident type breakdown for calendar year 2023. So we report to the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which is a national database, which we code our calls and report information to them, which enhances research and community outreach and information for fire and life safety. The gray piece of the pie chart, that's our rescue and EMS. I'm sorry that the font is a little small. This is, yeah, I'm not going to try to blow it up on the fly here, but I'll walk you through it. The gray is our rescue and EMS. It's about 63% of our total call volume. So rescue and EMS isn't just transports to the hospital. That could be searches for people on the water, on land, anything with kind of a rescue, search and rescue, or medical service component to it. So that's pretty consistent throughout the years. It's always somewhere kind of between 63 and 65% of our total call volume. The next biggest chunk is our false alarms and false calls at 15.63%. So a false alarm or a false call could be an alarm system malfunction, a sprinkler system malfunction, unintentional activations. So unintentional activation is different than a malfunction. Malfunction is the alarm system went off when it wasn't supposed to, whereas an unintentional activation would be maybe it was set off from cooking, smoke from cooking, smoke in a restaurant from the kitchen, things of that nature where we respond and there's not actually a fire. So that category kind of encompasses both of those categories. Service calls, which is kind of the neck to your 9 o'clock range there in the blue, is about 9.5% of our total calls. A service call could be anything from somebody locked out of a house, locked out of a vehicle, a child locked in a bathroom that can't get out, a young child. Really just a call for non-emergency type service, where they call us because we've just become the fail-safe for everybody. So those are kind of the biggest chunks of what we respond to. Fire is always a pretty small percent of what we respond to, at just about 1.5%. That was 46 fire calls last year. That encompasses building fires, vehicle fires, outdoor vegetation fires. Any type of fire falls into that category. Here's just a quick look at our staffing. Myself and the deputy chief are the two administrators. We have 2 day positions, which is our EMS captain and our fire inspector, who work regular business hours throughout the week. Those are also, they're also supplemental staff. They're both trained, they're cross-trained, they're firefighters, they're EMTs and paramedics. So as call volume dictates, if we have simultaneous calls, they are available during their regular working hours to be able to respond as well. We have 1 captain per shift, so we have 4 captains, 1 lieutenant per shift for 4 lieutenants. And then there's 20 firefighters, 5 assigned per shift underneath the captain and lieutenant. Of those, we have 14 of which are paramedics and 6 which are EMTs. In our fire department fleet, we have 2 full-size fire engines, 1 mini pumper, which was purchased 4 years ago, our Quint, which is our ladder truck. We have 3 ambulances. We have our high water vehicle, which has been put to the test lately with all our flooding. We have 4 administrative staff vehicles, 2 of which are take-home. Myself and the deputy chief both have take-home vehicles. And then the other 2, one is for the fire inspector, who's on the road most of the day doing inspections. And the 4th staff vehicle is shared between the EMS captain and on-duty personnel. It occasionally is taken on the road if the EMS captain isn't overloaded with meetings throughout the week, and staff has training out of town. They'll typically use that vehicle, which cuts down on kind of mileage reimbursement expenses. We have a service vehicle, which is our pickup truck, which is utilized for towing our various trailers. We have a rigid hull inflatable boat with a trailer. And we have a UTV, which is a utility terrain vehicle. It's essentially a four-wheeler. We forever have had a forestry vehicle. It's basically a small fire truck with a pump on the back and some smaller hose line. We use it to get into areas where fire trucks can't get, full-size fire trucks. We've had some significant mechanical failures with that vehicle this year. It doesn't do a lot of runs. It doesn't do a lot of calls. Going forward, our plan is to retrofit the mini pumper with a forestry reel, so forestry hose on a reel to go on that truck. It's the same size truck. It's the same size chassis as what our forestry vehicle was. So that'll kind of have a dual purpose. So we've been able to kind of reduce the fleet by one vehicle. Just looking at some other funding, we've been pretty successful with grants throughout the years. These are some of the current grants that we have that we're maintaining. The first one is an EMPG grant, that's Emergency Management Planning Grant, offered by MEMA, and CCP is our Citizen Corps program. So about $15,000 in grant money from that program, which has gone towards a trailer for the CERT team and equipment to outfit that. The BCEHO grant, this is leftover funding from when Medi Center 5 was in business. And there's still funding available that they offer to BCEHO is Brewster, Chatham, Eastham, Harwich, and Orleans. So we get a small amount of grant money from that program each year. This year we have $2,500, and we use that just for some incidental medical equipment. An additional EMPG grant from MEMA, we get $2,700 annually, roughly. Typically, we use that $2,700 to replace dry suits, our cold water suits for the folks on our water rescue team. So we replace about 2 of those per year. The Department of Fire Services PPE grant. So for each of the last 3 years, we've gotten about approximately $13,000 per year for a variety of different equipment. Our Department of Fire Services SAFE and Senior SAFE grant, we get about $7,000 annually. This is for doing our education for the students in the school, fire and life safety education, and we've expanded that to include programs for the seniors that we collaborate with the CFAL with to provide. And then lastly, Executive Office of Public Safety, AED grant, which we have $2,500 for. Some prior year grants, so those are all current year. These are some prior year grants. We've had success with the Assistance of Firefighting grant program from FEMA, which has reduced some of our capital expenses over the years. So for our repeater system, for our radios, basically that boosts the signal from our radios, we received $65,000. Our mechanical CPR devices, which we have one on each ambulance and then one spare at the station, we received $75,000. A training mannequin was $50,000. This is a training mannequin that it bleeds, it breathes. We can administer medications to, and we can control it all from a tablet and make its condition improve or worsen. So a pretty cool training device that we use fairly regularly with our paramedics and EMTs. Our stretcher power load grant, that enables our stretcher basically to lift itself into the ambulance with a push of a button. That was $86,000. And then unfortunately this year we put in for a training grant for $100,000. This was probably the most competitive year of AFG, and we made it to the last round, but unfortunately weren't successful in getting that. Last year we also got an EMPG grant, which supplied the CERT team with some uniforms and other equipment for $5,000. And our Comers grant is a radio grant that was offered through the state 2-3 years ago, which we got just under $50,000 to replace some radio equipment with. So I'm going to shuffle over to our digital budget book here and just take you somewhat line by line through this one.
Justin, we don't see it on Teams yet. I don't know if Channel 18's working on that. There you go. Thank you.
All right, so as I mentioned before, kind of the most significant increase to the operating budget this year is personnel expenses, which are really just contractual increases for cost of living and step increases for our newer firefighters that are still in our step system. So that represented a 4.5% increase. So our cost of living was 3% this year. You see it's 4.5 because there's also step increases as well. That's what drives that up a little bit. Our training budget is tied to personnel wages. So that's overtime that gets paid to the firefighters when they're off duty to attend training. So that increased 3%, consistent with the 3% increase in wages this year.
Just, where was that $100,000 training grant going to be plugged into in your budget?
So that was going to offer training that isn't really budgeted for right now. So that was specific to what we were trying to do. We've identified some training gaps, primarily officer development. So giving folks who aren't captains and lieutenants yet the requisite training to be if they aspire to be officers, and then also professional development for our officers that are currently captains and lieutenants. So what we applied for was grant funding for everybody on the department who's not currently an officer to attend a fire instructor program, which is the prerequisite to going to a fire officer certification program. Fortunately, those classes have been really difficult to get to. They were completely shut down during COVID, which then resulted in a huge backlog in what was available. They're offered through the Massachusetts Fire Academy, so it's kind of a long travel, but also there's just very limited in what they've been offering. But fortunately, the county does have a plan in place to bring some locally to the Cape in the next year. Similar to Chief Anderson in the police department, our longevity line went up about 6%. Not a big dollar number, just a jump in percentage, and that's just due to staff becoming more senior. Our holiday pay line went up, and again, that's just tied to, you'll see the 4.5% is consistent with our regular wages, which went up 4.4%. It's just representative of the contractual salary increases. Our educational incentive, you'll see a 17% increase on that line. So our educational incentive is the firefighters get paid when they get a degree, an associate's degree in fire sciences. They also get paid as they achieve credits towards that degree. So an increase in that is good. It means that the firefighters are getting more educated. Our special teams account, so this funds training for members of our water rescue team, our regional dive team, our regional technical rescue team, and our local drone team. So that increased 10%, which was just $2,250. A portion of that is the 3%, which is tied to their wages. And then also we have additional team members, which we've added this year. So overall, our total personnel expenses saw a 4.2% increase. Getting over to the expense side, our purchases services line is going to see the most significant increase, a 25% increase. And in the notes in the digital budget book, you'll see a portion of that was built in for, I used a 3% inflationary adjustment. And then new expenses in that account this year, there's a $2,000 increase for preventative maintenance and service agreements for our cardiac monitors. That was our vendor, the company is called Zoll. We have current agreements with them. It's just an annual agreement. They don't lock into long-term agreements, and they increase the cost annually for that by $2,000. And then there's a $5,000 increase in that line for preventative maintenance and service agreements on our stretchers. Currently, all of our stretchers, well, up until last year, all of our stretchers were still under warranty. All the warranties are expiring this year. So fairly expensive and critical equipment that we want to make sure that we're maintaining well. And if something goes wrong with it, we're able to get it fixed at a good cost. And then lastly, $3,000 for annual fire hose testing. Currently, that hose testing is being done in-house. Industry standards, the National Fire Protection Agency requires that the hose gets tested once a year. We've been doing that in-house. I would like to have the company that comes and do our ladder testing. They also offer hose testing service. I think it would be more beneficial to have them do it. They have better equipment, more consistent, better record keeping, and it'll reduce the likelihood of injuries for non-emergency type work. Under our continuing education line, you'll see a 20% increase. Again, not a huge dollar value. That increase is a result of a request for just under $2,600 for fire officer professional development, as I referenced before, and $1,800 for an increase in the tuition rates for recertification for the paramedics and EMTs for the continuing education that they have to do annually. So our continuing education line, that covers the expenses, the cost for recertifying with Mass DPH for all the paramedics and EMTs. It covers the course fees for signing up for the continuing education courses that are mandated, and then any other course fees for different training programs that the firefighters want to attend. So one thing that we identified, we've done some internal surveys this year to kind of look at the department soup to nuts. And one gap that was identified is we've promoted good people into fire officer positions of captain and lieutenant, and then their training kind of stops there. So we want to try to kind of focus on finding a good conference for them to go to, a leadership conference each year. So that's what that $2,600 is for course fees to help continue the development of those officers on shift. Under our operational supplies, so this is primarily our medical equipment, supplies for the ambulances, equipment on the ambulances. I put in a 4% adjustment on that. Really, I used 3% for the inflationary adjustment, and then an additional 1% increase just to adjust for our increase in call volume. As our transports continue to go up, we're just burning through more supplies. Our vehicle and equipment maintenance budget went up I'm putting in for a 3% increase on that. That's consistent with what the labor rates for mechanics has gone up consistently year after year. And then under meeting dues and travel, increasing from $3,000 to $4,500. And that's just for reimbursement expenses, hotels, meals, those sorts of things. There's no local training options. The Barnstable Fire Academy closed down a few years ago. They tore it down. We have nothing on Cape. We've been sending firefighters to Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire this year to get relevant training. So that's just to to help out with those expenses a little bit. So our total expense increase is just under 5%. So I'm going to go back to our slides here. Any questions on operating at this point?
Justin, was there a line item for other capital above that? Was there any, but I thought I saw some kind of.
Our capital outlay?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Historically, we've kept money in this capital outlay line item. It actually decreased from what it was in the past. This was the fund that we actually reallocated some money out of last year to assist with the surfacing at the playground. So traditionally, we leave some outlay money here. Our equipment is very expensive. It's critical. It's life-saving. And it's a good idea to have that fund on hand if we had a mechanical catastrophic failure of an engine. Our vehicle and maintenance account really accounts for kind of the routine maintenance and routine type repairs, tire replacements, things of that nature. It doesn't really account for if we had a truly catastrophic failure of one of our life-saving pieces of equipment. So that's kind of what that's in there for.
Thank you.
Often that fund doesn't really get touched too all that often, but it's there to be able to allocate funds if we need them in an emergency.
Yeah, I was just, there was a 0% increase. It just piqued my interest. It's good. Thanks.
Any other questions on operating before I move on to our capital items?
Any other questions? Nope.
All right.
Nope.
I know it's getting late. I'll try to wrap this up quick. All right, so our capital items for fire this year. Let's make that a little bigger for you. All right, so our firefighter protective clothing, this is for our turnout gear, our firefighting PPE. This is a kind of a customary capital request. It's recurring annually. We fund it every year. Over the past 2 years, we've requested $75,000 each. Traditionally, in the past, we kept that request around $20,000. We went up to $75,000 in FY23 and 24 to outfit all the firefighters with low PFAS gear. The materials have changed and what's available on the market. So we've been successful in outfitting everybody in the department with at least one set of the low PFAS gear now. The cost of our turnout gear has increased about double in the past 4 years. So where we traditionally had about $20,000 in that fund per year, we're increasing that to $50,000 going forward. So that's to make sure we are able to repair damaged gear, replace it if it's not repairable, and just do general maintenance. The turnout gear has a service life of 10 years. So while we've outfitted everybody with one set of the low PFAS gear, we have a replacement plan in place for replacing everybody's second set of gear. So every firefighter is contractually given 2 sets of turnout gear. So that'll just help with those replacements going forward. Our SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, this is a similar request as we've had the past several years of $10,000 per year. This is to replace any components of our self-contained breathing apparatus, the cylinder, the harness, the face masks, if they become damaged, need repair, or again, replacement at the end of their service life. Radios, same remarks on that. We've requested $10,000 for the past several years, and we're requesting that again this year. Our administrative vehicle, we're requesting $54,720 to replace a 2015 Ford with getting close to 70,000 miles on it now. Vehicle procurement's been very difficult. It's almost about 2 years out from once you sign a quote to getting delivery of the vehicle. So that's the oldest administrative vehicle we have right now that we're looking to replace. Our UTV trailer, currently we don't have the ability to trailer that unit outside of town. We'd like to be able to have it, right now, if it has to respond somewhere in town, we can respond down the bike trail. We have some safe methods to get it to further parts of town. But we don't have a way to really safely get it over the road if we had to go a significant distance. So requesting $5,000 to be able to trailer that. And lastly, I'll just skip ahead and add emergency management capital into this while we're here. Is a $40,000 request for emergency management generators. We've put in a generator request every year to build that account to continue to enhance our town generators. So this past year, in August, we finished the replacement of the permanent generator at the community center. We have funds available in that capital account to continue projects going forward. So one of the projects on the list is putting in a storm switch at the fire department. We are looking at putting a storm switch in for the ice machine at the fish pier to make sure that we have ice if we were ever to get hit with a hurricane. I was running around picking up sticks after Hurricane Bob, but I'm sure some of you folks remember that ice was a huge need once power was out for a significant portion of time. So those are some of the generator projects that we're looking at going forward. And the last thing I have is just the emergency management operating budget. As I mentioned in my initial statement, it's a budget reduction this year. We took the vehicle line out of $2,000. Other than that, everything's level funded for that budget request. And then the two small budgets we have, one is the Cape and Islands EMS assessment. That's a $5,990 budget, and that funds our annual assessment to the Cape and Islands EMS organization. They assist with providing continuing education in the area. They're our intermediary between our medical director at Cape Cod Hospital, and they provide quality assurance and quality improvement of our report writing. That assessment is based on the number of providers we have on staff, so I don't anticipate that going up at all. We're well within the threshold of the next assessment value. And then lastly, we have our oil pollution control budget of $500, and that's just to replace incidentals on our oil pollution control trailer. So I went back to FY 2000 to try to figure out why the Cape and Islands EMS assessment budget and the oil pollution control budget have been separated out. And as far as I can go back, they've been separated out. So.
All right, well, thank you very, very much for that presentation. Questions from the board? No? Jeff has one. Thank you.
Good job. Thanks, Justin.
No
Thank
problem.
you very much. Excellent job. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Everybody
Chief.
just wants to get out of here.
No. Very efficient. No, very much appreciated.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, moving on for our article review, A, fixed salaries for elected officials.
I can do that. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So before you, you have 3 articles to place and vote a recommendation on. These are articles that are pretty much annual. You've seen them in the past. The first one is the fixed salaries for elected officials. It actually sets the salaries for the elected officials, but it doesn't actually appropriate the funds under this article. That is done under the annual budget article. I'm still working on numbering. It does say article number 9. So for this particular one, fixed salaries of elected officials, we'd look for a motion to place and also recommend.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have to invoke the rule of necessity on this, under the conflict of interest law, which we've heard enough about tonight. We have to declare that we have an interest in this.
Yes.
And because we would have everyone disqualified, we wouldn't have a quorum, we wouldn't be able to vote on it. So I guess I will declare for myself, and I'll take the liberty of declaring for everybody else that we all have an interest in the salaries that we get that are part of this particular recommendation. I can't remember, do we have to take a vote on that?
You do.
We do.
Okay, so I move that we invoke the rule of necessity.
There's a
Second.
Okay. Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman, I move that we place this article on the warrant.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Board Member, Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend this article.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye. All right, Wood Waste Reclamation Facility Enterprise Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is our one and only enterprise fund, where the actual income that comes in for the lease or from the lease, it's actually used for our testing and monitoring. So the amount looking to appropriate, which is raise and appropriate, but through the enterprise fund is $25,000. And the current lease of the property expires on December 31st, 2029.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we place this article on the warrant.
Second?
Second. This has been 25 forever, right?
It has, and
It's
we
like-
went out for RFPs, or we reissued the lease a few years ago, so.
Okay.
Yep.
All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend this article.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Second. All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye.
Thank you. The next article before you is our child care voucher program. This is a program that is basically servicing toddlers all the way through age 21 years old. It's open to participation for residents and employees who work in the town of Chatham, including town employees. For this year, the Human Services Committee had reviewed the performance of this program, which has been very successful. They've requested an additional $25,000. So before you tonight is a request to appropriate $125,000 for the Chatham Child Care Voucher Program.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we place this article on the warrant.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend this article.
Second?
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye. Updates to Town Manager budget recommendations, if any?
Carrie, no updates needed? No, well, for tonight. So no, we have this as a reoccurring agenda item, so every week if there is an update, we can report on it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
I did have a question. I tried to locate the budget book, the digital budget book online. Where is it? Is it not online?
We can show you. So
Oh, maybe you can show me yeah, or tomorrow.
It's under the finance department.
yeah, we
Okay.
can hear you on the
I'll look at it.
It's in Budget Central. That's how the team tonight has been accessing it through.
Sorry.
I did go to Budget Central.
So if you go to the Town of Chatham website, and then you go down to departments, and
Yeah.
you select the finance department, the FY 2025 digital budget book is located on there, like a link, so you can click on that, and then it will bring you right to the FY
All
25
right, I'll
digital
try
budget.
that away. I went to Budget Central. Maybe I just clicked on the wrong link.
I can show you after, too.
That's all right.
Okay.
I'll try it. If I have a problem, I'll call you.
Okay, that's
you.
fine.
All right, we have several appointments this evening. First is the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. We have 2 alternate seats available. On January 11th, 2024, we had interviewed Dawn Drinkwater and Tracy Golden for consideration of the 2 open alternate seats for the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. I will entertain nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Tracy Golden as an alternate to the Summer Residence Advisory Committee until June 30th, 2025, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Okay. Further nominations for that one? No? Okay. All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Excuse me, Chair, who made the second on that motion?
I believe Jeff did.
Jeff made the.
He made the
Jeff made the
motion.
motion, sorry.
Dean,
I made the second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Don Drinkwater as an alternate to the Summer Residence Advisory Committee till June 30th, 2025, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Next, Traffic Safety Committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I move to appoint Jeff Gordon as an alternate to the Traffic Safety Committee until June 30, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Zoning Board of Appeals, we have 2 associate seats available. To note, actually, we received correspondence from the current chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals endorsing the applicants for their position, the openings, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
I move to appoint Steve DeBeer as an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals until June 30, 24, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Edward Acton as an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Planning Board, we have 1 open seat. We have 1 applicant.
No, 2.
Oh, sorry, 2, sorry.
Okay.
There are 2 seats? I thought there was just one.
There's 1 open seat.
There's 2 candidates. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I move to appoint Frank Scherer as a member of the Planning Board until June 30th, 24, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second. Any other nominations?
I'm going to, Mr. Chairman, I move to nominate, to appoint Roy Johansson as a member of the Planning Board until June 30, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Is there a second? All right. So basically, we have the 2 individuals, and we will go by roll call, I guess. So Select Board Member Castro.
Frank Shearer.
Select Board Member Davis.
Frank Scherer.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Frank Scherer.
Select Board Member Shell.
I interviewed both Mr. Johansson and recruited him, so I'm going to, I love both these candidates. I'm going to abstain.
That makes my vote mute, actually, but there I get 3 votes. I'm going to vote for, I think they're both excellent candidates. I'm going to vote for Roy Johansson. I think each of them are very, very qualified individuals, so. All right. So,
Mr. Chairman, I
yes, please.
agree with that. I hope that, I guess Mr. Johansson was the candidate that was not successful. I hope he's encouraged to put his name in again.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
suspect there will be
agreed.
openings in
Yes.
the planning board coming
Absolutely.
forward. I
It's
bet they
not
were
a
both
slight on
great
either one of these
candidates.
gentlemen. I think they're both very
Yeah.
qualified gentlemen. Yep.
I agree.
All right. And let's see.
Conservation.
We have conservation, I'm just looking at the agenda, says Golf Advisory first, but so we're going to stick with Conservation Commission, which has 3 associate seats open.
Apparently no candidates.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
I move to appoint Eric Hilbert as an associate member of the Conservation Commission until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. And now we have the Golf Advisory Committee, which has 1 open seat.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Barbara Starkey as a member of the Golf Advisory Committee until June 30th, 2026, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Do I hear a
Second.
second? Okay, further discussion. All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right. Finally, Town Manager's Report for December 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, we recognize the years of service, anniversary dates for our employees, and you'll see them listed there. I also want to introduce two new employees. One, Eric Finnan, who you might have seen working at the transfer station in the recycling area. He has now taken the full-time position as the transfer station gate attendant, and we're really excited to have him. And then Michael McKean is our DPW's grounds laborer. So both excellent hires for us, and we're really excited to have him join. And then Brett Fortin, who you might have seen at the transfer station as the gate attendant. Again, the transfer station is like the first line of introduction to the town. They're really our great frontline employees. Brett's moved over to the DPW's grounds laborer position, so he's very excited about that. Also noted in here are recruitments, Chatham TV productions, some really cool things with DPW, with Tom Barr about behind the scenes of snow operations. And as well, you'll see some interesting photos to match the projects, again, with Shauna's eye towards promoting the projects, and that was one of the number one areas that was requested through the communications survey. And throughout the report, you'll see, I'm sorry, before I move on to what else is in the report, there's also information here about the budget presentation that the finance director and I did last week and how to access that information. And then you'll see the end-of-year report essentially for December. And in it, I know that some of you had inquired about the sewer project status, the construction part of it, that's included in the DPW section, but the actual tie-ins, that's under natural resources. So that's an area that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted for you. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Question, Dean?
Yeah, well, first, I just wanted to note among the anniversaries are our own Shauna Neely.
Yes.
17 years, so congratulations to Shauna. With respect to the tie-ins on the sewer, I appreciate those coming in. That was requested by Elaine Gibbs, and Shireen endorsed that. I think I did too. I just, a little clarification going forward, because I'm assuming that the first three categories, where it doesn't say there's a mandatory order in place, that those are actually connected. So there's 336 plus 78 plus 99. If we could clarify that going forward, because it doesn't say they were connected. I think that was the intention.
Yeah, let me do that. I think Greg had been here for most of the meeting, but let me circle back with him.
Yeah.
And also, the budget transmittal has an update on the wastewater project with the number of connections in there,
Yeah.
so we do have that.
I think on future reports, if we could identify which ones were actually connected specifically.
Okay.
And also, if they could be a tally on the number of connections, bottom line,
Sure.
maybe up at up front. Those are my comments.
Any additional comments? Only thing I'll share is, I look at our employee years of service, and based on tonight's conversation, we have 3 of our police officers that have 3 years and 2 at 1 year, and hopefully in the future, we'll have the double digits next to their names and retain them and have them grow in the police department's family, so
Yep, definitely.
that'd be great. So,
I thought it was a great ad for the harbor master. I thought that was a great ad.
Thank you. And some people are not on social media, so we're trying to check it with the main sheet in the monthly report.
all right, one last motion of the evening, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, further discussion. Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Before you were out.